Alright, so what is going on YouTube? This is Brew versus TheCode Deathmatch World Cup 4 in the losers bracket. We'll have a Sicilian mirror in the first game, and you could see why, there was immediately a question on why do you drop a castle early on. That is because castles give you population space and Sicilians build castles so fast. In a Sicilian mirror, you always delete your scout in Deathmatch and just make a castle as fast as possible because that's more efficient than making houses. You could see a market strategy coming in here for Brew, who is going to be playing red on the left, and the right side will be TheCode, the Deathmatch master in Sicilians as well. Code was the player that played in the previous Deathmatch World Cup's Grand Finals, lost 4-0 to Viper, and was widely considered to be one of the candidates to reach the Grand Finals of this event, but to the surprise of many people, Brew actually lost to, or Code lost to Brew 4-0 in the winner's bracket, so this is a rematch from a previous set of the tournament. It was a 4-0 win at that time for Brew, which was a massive surprise. Brew has had a huge improvement recently, but none expected him to beat the Code 4-0. For the time being, it looks like we'll have 0 villager snipes overall, as this is how Sicilian mirrors usually play out. Sergeants, onagers. This is the old patch they are playing, so Sicilians do not have siege onager just yet. And you can tell that Code wants to secure this ridge here really fast, but I wonder if he has the momentum to do so. And it's a more interesting play from Brew here. Cavalier and Scorpion. But it might work better, honestly, because Scorpions will annihilate the Sergeants, and the Cavalier is still fully upgraded for Brew. Usually, in Sicilian mirrors, you see Sergeants, Onagers, and then some Scorpions being added, but it looks like Brew is going to have a different game plan overall. From what I understand on Challenge, there are 2 matches left in the losers bracket after this one. Yes. There is going to be... The winner of this one will face the winner of the previous set. That's going to be what's called losers bracket semifinals. And then the losers bracket grand finals will be, or your losers bracket finals will be played by the player that wins the losers bracket semifinals versus the player that loses in the winners bracket semifinals. That's the concept. If you had a bit of a downtime, I would have explained this in between the 2 sets. First Crusade coming in here. Once you get up to 5 town centers, First Crusade is a must-have, and Code has to delete this foundation. Code? I think Code... Yeah, Code lost that foundation. That's very, very sloppy from the Code. That foundation for the castle was lost. He's minus 600 stone. First Crusade coming in here for him. Code actually has the ridge here, and it's a little bit sloppy from Brew that he's fighting up hills against that castle. Sicilian castles are actually pretty sturdy. And one thing that is an advantage for Brew is that he's got the mobility of the cavalry, so he can try to dive in and snipe those traps. Sergeants block their way very, very nicely. And for a time being, it looks like this first castle will be going down here from the Code. Some raids coming in here from Cavalier for the Code. Ecos are still very, very close. Code killed 7 wheels, only 3 by Brew. But this middle ridge is going to be so, so important. It's like right in between the 2 players. Whoever controls this one is going to have a very, very nice momentum pushing into the opponent's base. This is especially important for Brew because it's closer to his base. So if he loses that, he's going to have his stone mine and potentially his primary gold contested here. We're going to have the Cavalier diving in, sniping the traps. And now that's a lot of Scorpions from Brew. Onagers will be the response, but Cavalier Scorpion might beat Sergeant Onager. Brew actually selling quite a lot of stone here for some more gold, and now he's diving into snap the onagers. Remember that Code seems to have a huge army, but most of that came from First Crusade, so when these disappear, Code is gonna have a really tough time replenishing his army, and I'm not gonna lie, he's 5 on food. What is he gonna do here? And he could still try making siege weapons, but his opponent has cavalry. I feel like the momentum is amazing here for Brew, and he's just absolutely annihilating that force. It's 52 army versus 50 only. Ecos are also very close, but Code has no resource bank, especially the food count is disturbing, whereas his opponent is still having a lot of food in the bank, which allows him to at least make light cavalry to snipe the siege weapons. And he also has a death blob of 28 Scorpions, now setting up the traps for a counterattack. The castle is up on the right side for Brew to protect his gold mine over here. Counterattack coming in by the code, might actually find a villager. Nope. No villager was found in this counterattack up until this moment, where one goes down in a very, very painful way. Still, as I said, Code's castle here in the middle is heavily contested. He's establishing his food eco just now. He's trying to get a dungeon up on the left side to try and secure that gold mine, but his opponent, with the Sicilian faster building TCs, he will just drop a TC there, so this dungeon is going to be denied. In here, unless Brew doesn't notice it, it's going to be a cleanup here as well. Code killed 10 vills, he only lost 3, so that should be an advantage in theory, and he definitely has an eco advantage. The problem is that he has very, very limited momentum, and he's losing very, very crucial castles and map position, as this dungeon indeed is not going up for our blue player, and this is exactly why the eco advantage may not be enough for Code, because he's just forced to take so bad fights against all those sergeants, as we are gonna have the castle up on the left side for Brew. Brew is 28 on food, 41 on gold, basically the same eco now compared to Code, but his army convinces me a lot more. It's 51 compared to 25. Population still being fairly close, and now siege gems will be added to the party. Still, these traps firing down hills will melt the siege workshops really easily, which means that the next place where Code will be able to stop this push will be here. He will be pushed away from this position, sergeants diving in and sniping the majority of those siege weapons. And the big difference between the two players is that Brew is able to preserve his siege, because he's mainly going for cavalry and scorpions, whereas his opponent is going more on the sergeant line, and the sergeants have a much harder time sniping siege weapons. So I really like this. This is, I think, a new idea from Brew. I haven't seen this one in Sicilian Mirror so far. Obviously, the meta for Deathmatch Sicilian Mirror is completely unknown, so everybody's just trying to figure out what's the best way of playing. Initially, it was all about sergeant numbers, First Crusade, but now it's going to be shifting a little bit more towards Scorpions. It's a little bit of a sloppy fight here from Brew. He's losing quite a lot of Scorpions here to that Onager, and the only thing that's holding this hill right now is just a dungeon. The siege dam should be able to finish it off quite easily now. A dungeon that has all the imp upgrades is actually a pretty sturdy beast, so it's not as weak as it is in Feudal Age. Still, it's gonna go down quite rapidly to Trebs and the Rams, but it looks like the meat shield might be disappearing here for Brew, and I feel like his momentum is somewhat disappearing. I also don't approve that castle. I don't think that he could get one up on that hill, but I feel like that hill would be so much more important to hold. The castle still goes up, so it helps quite a bit protecting this gold mine. It would have been more ideal if that castle goes up here, as Code will attempt an aggressive castle on this hilltop once again. As I said, the momentum seems to be disappearing from Brew. He's at 21 military only, so his army just vanished, so to say. And now he's stacking into Champion, but Champion gets eaten by Sergeants. Sergeants have 7 melee armor and the 15 attack with 75 HP, as opposed to 17 attack but only 5 melee armor. So Sergeants aren't that, or Champions aren't that bad against Sergeants, but Sergeants should still win this one by a fairly considerable margin. Especially if you consider that Sergeants are more resistant to arrow fire when fighting in the middle of this carnage. A trap immediately comes out for Code. He also has the hill advantage. No trap for Brew just yet, and I feel like I just don't see the army for Brew. He's 39 on gold, kind of comparable gold miner count compared to his opponent. I just don't know why Brew is so low on army. It seems like he might be over-booming here a little bit. 160 vills, 86 food villagers. I just feel like he might be a little too low on gold. Maybe he could have sent a little bit more on gold, because that food count seems a bit too excessive. We're talking about 100 vills on food soon, but only 32 on gold. And now his right side cast is getting trapped down. I like how he took this neutral gold away, by the way. And that's going to be extremely important. This is the neutral gold that should belong to Code, and this is the one that should belong to Brew. So being able to steal this gold mine is huge, although he will most likely lose all his farmers here. At this pace, still just 20 free army for him, queuing up mostly champions and cavalier. But as I said, I think Sergeant Onager here works much better. Scorpion's now back in. Remember that Brew is going to have way more gold to work with, so I think Code is actually going to be running out of gold in the next couple of minutes. Brew is still going to have a completely untouched gold mine to take. So that's going to give a nice advantage for him. Plus Brew also went for a market strategy, which also kind of increases his chances of outlasting his opponent in terms of gold count. The good news for Code though is that Code is on 4 relics and his opponent is on 0. And as I said, this overboom might be just worthless for Brew because he's going to lose these veils anyway here. So he's down to like 130. He's getting back on track in army, but I feel like he has lost too much momentum. And I did mention that he's gonna have that gold mine on the left side, but he will lose his secondary gold here. The lack of army meant that he lost the castle here and lost the TC here. He just lost his entire defensive position because he didn't really have army to fight with. And now it looks like Code is taking over. In the first set they played in this tournament, Code got 4-0'd. I haven't seen the set, but that was considered a massive upset. It's not about the fact that Brew was winning against Code, it's more about the fact it was a 4-0. And as I said, one of the nice things about these dungeons is that they actually do quite a lot of damage to the champions, whereas Sergeants are a lot more resistant to arrowfire, and now Sicilian light cap feels like a very, very disturbing sight, because your opponent still has enough to get a fairly tanky army out on the field. Now, here's the deal though, the Code is out of gold, so this is the moment where Brew has to capitalize on the fact that he still has 25 on gold and start overrunning his opponent with gold units, especially this gold mine, which for whatever reason Brew is not taking. I wonder if he sees that on the minimap, because it's actually hard to spot. Could it be possible that Brew doesn't see this gold mine? Because obviously he's focusing on the fight, so he's not going to scroll there, and on the minimap it's actually pretty hard to spot. There's a possibility here, as he takes down some very expensive traps from his opponent and saves the castle. That was an excellent fight there for Brew. Almost a life-saving one, I would say. So now he's gonna have a defensive position here. The problem is that he lost his gold, and if you are Code right now, you're gonna have to bring in some gold miners here, because you're out of gold and you don't have a neutral gold. Nice raid here from the Code. Brew is at 126 veils, but Brew's got some cavalier inside the Code's base, and this could be a disaster for Code. I don't see a single unit that's actually here to clean it up. Now it's a halberdier, but it's Sicilian cavaliers, so they withstand a lot more punishment from cavalier and or from halberdiers. And I just feel like as Brew is trying to quick wall that trap in to try and save it from the opponent's champions, look at the amount of champs here. That's a lot of champions for Brew. In this one, no siege, just pure vanilla champions. In this one, Code has to sell some food for gold. Brew is still just 10 on gold, but he needs that castle down, and he will get that down. For the time being, his castle is still standing, and his cavaliers are still rampaging the eco of the Code, who is still at 120 veils. Brew, however, had to sacrifice all his champions. There were 2 dungeons and 2 castles shooting at those champions. So they go down really fast, and I legitimately believe that Brew doesn't see this gold. There is no way that he wouldn't take this. This is the safest gold on the map for him, and you can tell that he's sort of sending kamikaze vills in here for this gold mine. I don't think that he sees this gold, which could be a game-losing thing. Like, Code sent some light cav here, because he's like, oh yeah, he's probably mining gold there, but probably Code is just as surprised as we are that Brew is not there, and that's the gold that's missing for Brew right now. Because that could be some extra siege weapons, some champions, some even cavalier, to be honest. Could be anything. And now that's a very, very mispositioned trap as well from Brew. Oh boy, that's a disaster for him. I think Brew is collapsing under the pressure right now, because his eco is getting raided really heavily here. Brew has had a so great start in this one. He secured that neutral gold, and he should have been able to just use that other gold mine and finish the game. He took some very inefficient engagements, so the KD is massively in the favor of Code, by the way. 700 kills to 600 losses, as opposed to 600 kills to 700 losses. Eco KD is also much better for the Code. He killed 91 whales, his opponent only killed 44. And Code also has 4 relics, so... yeah, I don't understand why Brew tried to expand his food eco here. This stone wall is nice from the Code, I like that quite a bit. Protecting his eco. And Brew doesn't see that gold. There is no way he wouldn't actually take it if he saw that. I'm gonna have to switch back to the game. Oh, I see why. In-game, it's almost impossible to spot on the minimap. The Capture Age minimap uses slightly different color palette, but even on this one, it's actually hard to spot. But in-game, this is even more sneaky. Snow. Believe it or not, Brew doesn't know about this gold mine, even though the map is revealed. But he never looks at this screen because he's busy fighting in the middle. Scottage coming in here for him, I don't think that's going to matter that much. Like, Scottage is something that will be in proportion to your army, but he's got no army. Like, look at the amount of gold that he's gonna receive for that army that he has. I think he even cancels. Actually, no, he didn't cancel it. He's got 400 gold for it. I mean, it helps, sure. But... yeah. But shouldn't know that there is a set amount of neutral gold. He took a neutral gold. That's the thing. He took a neutral gold from here. I think Brew believes that that was his neutral gold and Code has a neutral gold somewhere around over here. Oh my goodness, McCausland. Thank you so much for that. Gifting free, tier free gift subs. One going to Dave and one going to Brissolin. I think those are well-deserved ones. Dave getting one, and Brissolin, a very, very important member of the Deathmatch community. Thank you so much for those tier-free gifts. I appreciate that a lot. So, yeah, I think that at this point, Brew believes that he took his own neutral gold, and Code has his one somewhere on the right side, because there is so many things happening, you don't have time to scan the map for resources like that. And if he just looks here for a split second, he will notice this gold mine. And that's life and death right now for him. And Code is doing the right thing, sending the wheels forward. I feel like the more and more we advance in this game, the less important that gold mine is gonna be. And you can tell he's just scrambling for gold. Oh man. That's a horrible way to lose a game. Even if he had that gold, there is no guarantees he wins it. But I have to say that... that is going to be painful for him to look at. I can 100% understand his pain after looking at the... like, if he loses this and watches the recorded games, he's going to look at this game and say, oh man, that shouldn't have been a thing. Now, he is still not giving up, and he's doing some nice job with the right cav raids, and it doesn't seem like Code has a lot of army to clean this one up. So, one thing to consider is that Code is pushing slowly. But... there is quite a lot of raid being done here. It would have been even better if those light cav hit this part of Code's eco. Code is at 117 wheels, his opponent is 136, but Code has 4 relics, and Code has a much bigger army right now. And now he finds the gold. And you can see how he jumps on it. This might save the day here for him. And if he grabs that gold, he should also make sergeants here, because, as I said, sergeants should win against the champions, and now... suddenly he's the player with gold and his opponent won't have it. The question is if this came too late. Because it's very possible that this is just a little too late. Because he lost so much map control to this one. At least it's going to give him a chance in this game. So the good news is that he will have a chance to redeem himself. But because that gold was so late, that pretty much means that... he's gonna have a tough time redeeming himself in this one. Still, the way to go now is light cav rates for him. He still has 75 on foot, Code with 76. The problem for him right now is that he needs to take so many fortifications down. Like, buildings all over the place is going to be problematic to take down, and Code is on 4 relics, so all Code needs to do is just slow down his opponent until he runs out of gold, and you can see that this gold is, like, half done by now. Still, champion numbers increasing steadily, and it's going to start becoming a now or never situation for Brew. He needs to bring in some traps, start trapping down these buildings, and then just flood out the champions. Luckily for him, champions don't cost gold, or, well, they do cost gold, but they don't cost a huge amount of gold. So, They're actually fairly gold efficient. So, no siege whatsoever just yet for him, as TheCode is forced to mix in some more and more light cav. Not a single light cav on the field from Brew, as, by the way, Code secures the southern part of the map with some light cav, and he will start trickling in cavalry on the left side. Brew had to sell his stone before to get some more gold, and that means that he's going to be unable to drop a castle to this crucial position. This hill is extremely important to protect this wood, and to make sure that your trade or your food eco here is protected. These castles are nice, but you need something that protects this area, and that would be a castle here. Or alternative is a stone wall. That's actually a nice one. Big fight in here. It looks like Code is going to lose one trap over here. A second one comes in. It's only dungeons and one castle to break through. And Code is at 500 stones. He will be able to repair for a while, but not for a huge amount of time. And it's 56 champions against just 36. The problem is for Brew that he needs to be super fast here, because you see that this gold mine is almost out. He's got 400 gold remaining on that gold mine. He's not raiding the opponent's eco, whereas Code is bringing in light cav more and more. Just light cav flooding the farm eco. And most importantly, Code is on 4 relics, whereas Brew is on 1. The trap survives by a very, very narrow margin, which probably means the end of this dungeon here on this hill. Some more light cav coming in here from our Brew player. And Brew is struggling to clean this one up. This is why I said that this part of his eco is extremely exposed. And it seems like I was right about that. Army numbers are still pretty close, as Brew brings up some wheels to repair those traps. Now the castle is gonna be under fire. Once the castle and the dungeon goes down, the momentum could shift into the favor of Brew, but the problem for him is that he's still unable to impact the opponent's economy in terms of raiding. Army numbers still pretty close. Population getting close to being top cap for both players. Code now tries to surround the traps here with the light cav. The light cav died to the champions pretty easily though, and there is a couple of repair villagers, so this trap stays up. Now the champions arrive from the right side, and it looks like one trap is gonna go down. The castle still stays up. Code has enough stone to repair, and Brew also trying to repair that trap as much as possible, but I feel like this is the moment where Brew is running out of juice, and that gold came in too late. It came in too late because by the time he had that gold, he already lost too much map position. That gold was needed when he was fighting over here on this hill to finish off the game. So now his best hope is that he can raid his way back into the game, but he's 140 pop against 172. He's up against 4 relics with just 1 in his hands. 71 on food versus 91, and Code is just banking up food. So at this point, Code could just start selling that as well for some more gold so he can keep adding champions or add scorpions, or just make more light cav. I think Code's base is much more defendable than his opponent's base is. This is the biggest weakness of that base. If Code makes a stone wall here and here, there's gonna be very limited raiding opportunity for our red player, whereas this is still wide open on the left side of Brew's base. 110 villagers and 106. These are some nice raids, I have to say, from Brew. So he's killing quite a lot. His only way back into the game is to raid his way back, but even then I don't necessarily see how he could swing this battle back in his favor, because Code can do just as much raiding as he can. It looks like Brew is ready for those light cav breaking into his eco because he had a force established over here. And he's doing a very, very nice job raiding overall. He pushed Code down to 100 vills, and I feel like now Code is losing more vills than he can afford to lose. And this direct push has stopped. Code down to 92. And there is already a next wave for Brew here with the light cav. These light cav will be eaten by the champions, as for now it looks like Brew will just start trading champions, but Code's eco isn't necessarily amazing. He's gonna have to reboom. The key thing for Brew is just constantly raiding the opponent's eco, because if Code is allowed to reboom, this game is over. So now it's 89 on food versus 85, only 6 on wood for the Code, but he's got 6,000 wood in the bank. Still, One of the things that, as I said, Brew could do is raid the northern part of the map, because this is super exposed farming eco, or just keep sending in more units. And look at the light cav numbers for Code. He just has none. He's got a huge amount of champions, which is very scary. It looks like we'll have a big push coming in for Code. He doesn't want to raid anymore, he wants to do one direct push, and this is gonna be very scary for Brew to fight against. One onager could actually make wonders happen here, but it's 3 trebs to destroy this castle. And when this castle goes down, this farming eco is very exposed. Brew is doing the right thing with the raiding, I just don't know if he has the army to stop this push. It's 45 champions against 60, might be enough to grind down the numbers here to a point where you can potentially take down those traps. The castle went down in this one, and now champions are raiding Brew's eco. Brew is still doing an excellent job raiding, but Code is just rebuilding his eco fast enough. He's back to 100 vills, and Brew is at 18 army versus 83. It's too late. That gold came in too late for Brew, and it's actually very unfortunate for him because it was really hard to spot on the minimap. But on the negative side of the things, if he spots that, I think he could have won this game. He also lost a lot of scorpions in the middle, so overall you can tell that Code was taking much more cost-efficient engagements overall. And you also have to add the fact that he's got a way better KD. So it wasn't just about cost efficiency, it was also about the fact that he was able to take some better fights compared to Brew. And also the fact that he secures 4 relics is huge, because he's got a very, very consistent gold income, whereas his opponent isn't. And the fact that Code is winning this game despite losing both neutral gold mines is actually huge. I think this is the last fight here for Brew. Is it? Brew's got 99 on food, Code with 104 vills on food, 6 on wood, 0 on gold. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be, but no matter how hard I look, I don't see a win condition for Brew here. There's just so limited amount of army that he can work with, and I believe that soon we will see the next wave of cavalry coming in here from Code, or he might just build on his current momentum and start trapping down buildings. And the thing is that Brew, the longer the game goes, the worse it's going to be for Brew. So he needs to win a fast game here, and currently he's on the defensive. So as things stand, I just don't see how he could actually compensate for that 4-1 relics deficit. He's trying to get some PCs up here. He, I think, might want to try and play for wood control. So we are gonna have 63 champions against 32. On the other hand, Code doesn't have to play for any resource control, he just needs to go for a direct push. He knows he's got 4 relics, he knows that he has the advantage over the opponent, he knows that he's got a very consistent eco as well with the score lead. So now those champions will start marching in and destroying everything. So, champions now coming in here on the north. Quick wars are attempted, but quick wars is not really something that works nicely against champions that have full upgrades and arson. It looks like Brew is just dancing back and forth. He wants to prevent those champions from breaking in, but he doesn't want to fight otherwise. The problem is that at this point, Code is more than happy not to fight. Would one onager cutting trees help for Code? Maybe. I feel like it's more about the fact that Code doesn't need to do anything here. So, all Code needs to do is just wait until his opponent actually runs out of gold. And, well, his opponent is already out of gold, but he can just sit on his relic lead forever. That's the thing, like, Code doesn't have to take any risks whatsoever. He can just sit on his lead, force fights. In fact, you see that he's trying to force engagements. The champion numbers are up now for Brew. The problem is that, like, replenishing these champions is gonna be much harder for our red player. In fact, it's going to be fairly impossible to replenish those champions for him. Whereas for the Code, The Code is still having a decent food bank. Huge food bank for a Code, by the way. That's the bigger deal. Both players are getting quite a lot of gold from selling resources, especially selling food. But the fact that there is a much bigger bank for Code allows him to sell a lot more. You see, he just sold 2k. If his opponent sells 2k, he's not gonna have food for champions. And Brew is holding out against this one, but Code is just going to bring in the reinforcement, and this is just going nowhere for Brew. It feels just like a very, very slow grind forward. Some onagers could actually make some sense, by the way, on either side, because one way for Brew to swing the battle in his favor is gamble on onager hits. Same thing for for Code. 1 or 2 onager hits could actually swing the battle massively in your favor, and that may be enough. The problem is that even if Brew wins a fight here, he has so many buildings to take down. It takes forever for him to get to the base of the opponent and try to push him. He actually did a nice cavalry raid over here, so Code is back to 100 vills, but I think Code is more than happy to sit at 100 vills, because he still is pop-capped, he still has the better army value, he still has a huge amount of resources in the bank, so I feel like losing those vills is not really a big deal right now for the Code, and you can tell Code is already securing some woodlands in the north. So, 86 vills only for the Code, and some more raids are coming in. I think Code has been deleting some vills as well. So, I don't think that it's a big deal if he goes down below, like, 80 vills. Probably you want at least 75, as there is a hole there, which shouldn't have been the case for the Code, because now these light cabs will find quite a lot of farmers. Still, there's a big scuffle in the middle, as we have 98 champions versus 59. There's no way that Brew wins this fight, and even just 1 or 2 scorpions can help so much here for Brew, or for Code as well. And Code is the one with the scorpions. The light cabs are pretty much destroying the eco for Code here, but when you have this big resource bank, this is what I was referring to. Gambling on onager hits might be the play here for either side. I feel like this onager comes in too late though. By the time the onager comes in, the army, the meat shield for Brew is just gone. And as I said, he's gonna have no tools to replenish this one. He's doing his best, but he's at 12 champions with 11 in queue. His opponent is still at 50 champions. And Code actually lost a huge amount of eco though. If Brew finds a way to hold this one, he might have a bit of a momentum. Because Code's eco is now very, very weak, and he's got a huge resource bank, but it's not like he can sell 5k food for gold. I think that this castle is almost guaranteed to go down, unless there's a big onager hit here. But the only reason why I think our red player is not tapping out of this one is because he believes that he may have a shot at just outlasting his opponent in resources once he's able to raid it. The castle goes down. Code adding his eco back though, and I feel like if Code gets back to like 100 vills, or even just 85-90, then this game is a no-no for Brew. He's losing ground for a while, and now a significant portion of his farming eco is exposed. And as I said, it's one thing to hold, and it's a different thing to be able to finish off an opponent that is sitting on 4 relics for what is basically an hour-long game by now. So, you're gonna have the Code pushing up soon, I believe. Brew is really resilient here, not giving up. I just don't know how he plans to win the game. Because as I said, holding and winning is 2 massively different situations. So we are gonna have still 100 vills on food for Brew, and I guess he wants to do some more light cab raids. Code, all he needs to do is just wall himself, honestly. Just wall this, and Brew cannot do anything. The only reason why Brew was able to at least make it very competitive, or somewhat competitive here, is because he's constantly raiding Code. And I don't understand why Code is not adding some stone walls here. He's got the resources for it. Even palisade walls could work. Anything that limits the movement of those light cavalry, so that they don't just run past your castles. This is still a hole, because Obviously, Code is focusing on his army as the not paying attention to his eco getting raided. 22 champions against 47 though. A couple of sergeants now join the fun, and that castle will melt like butter here. So, 3 trebs with hill advantage. You see that this castle is gonna be history in a moment, and that's the only relic that Brew is in possession of. So there is a very distinct chance that the final relic for Brew will also go down. Bit of a sloppiness here from Code, allowing those champions to access the trebs, and 1 treb goes down. Still, no stone in the bank for Brew to repair that castle, so that's still gonna go down, despite the fact that the champs will finish off the trebs. But Code takes game number 1 over here. I think after securing 4 relics, and Brew just not being able to push when he had the momentum, it was pretty much over. Alright, it looks like we're going back to Arabia in game number 2 though. We'll have to do this fast because, you know, I think we started a little bit behind. And this is going to be the home map of Brew. He believes in Sicilians. And the reason why he believes in Sicilians is because he is going... I might need to restart Capture H here, hold on. Nope. Capture is still cooperating. So the reason why he believes in Sicilians is because he offers Huns and Sicilians for Brew, or for Code, and Code takes Huns. Huns versus Sicilians is one of those matchups where you have a very strong and sturdy army for Sicilians, and a fast-moving army for Huns. In the direct engagement, I think, honestly, I like Huns a lot more. I don't know what Brew has as his idea. He's technically making barracks only. So it's going to be like Hub, Sergeant, Scorpion, I would assume. But I think that if you just make Paladin, Cav Archer, you can pick off Wills so easily. The problem with Sicilians is that Sicilians have absolutely 0 Will snipe potential. So you see what Code is doing. He will send 1 Paladin in here, 1 Paladin in here, and will kill Wills. Now, the idea with Sicilians, or at least one of the ideas, is that you build TCs and castles super fast. So you're gonna have defensive castles up fast, you're gonna have TCs up fast, you can expand your eco nicely, but these sergeants will be dying to the Paladins here. In fact, if you compare the 2 units, there is 1 extra armor for the sergeants, but they have weaker armor, or weaker attack, weaker HP, and they're slower. So Paladins is just far better than sergeants are. They have the mobility advantage. I have absolutely no idea what the game plan is for Sicilians here for Brew. I don't think that he should have expected Code to pick Sicilians here, because I feel like that's a safe advantage for Huns here. I think that lack of mobility is a significant concern here for Sicilians, and you see that as things stand, we already have double the army for Code, and Code doesn't even play aggressive. If Code played aggressive, he would be killing Wills here by now. 5 Cav Archers here, and this is -2 Wills for a red player. He's waiting for his siege rams to come in. Speaking of siege rams, we'll have quite a lot of siege for Brew, so I guess that's his plan. Sort of a halberdier and siege ram based approach. Code is playing this one super passive, by the way. Secures gold mine in the middle with a plan, the defensive castle on that hill. And other Paladins are coming in, and this is the moment where you have to consider, how do you stop all these Paladins? Because these are so many that they can even take down TCs, and the red player will be constantly forced to chase. I feel like the only way that you can actually make this work is if you actually somehow get to the same scenario as you would have with a Goths versus Huns matchup. Like Halberdier and Sergeant spam, but I think that Goths are just way more resource efficient in this case. Now this is not a fight that you want to take, honestly. This is definitely not a fight that you want to take, and a lot of those Paladins died. Still, now the Paladins are coming in on the north. Ecos are dead even. Middle fight is going to be a victory for Code, but Brew actually secures a castle here, and one thing to say is that he's gonna have nice positions with those defensive castles, takes a rather inefficient engagement against Halberdiers, but this TC might not go up either, and as I said, mobility for Huns is huge here. I really dislike the way that Code is throwing away so much army, because a lot of these units are very expensive and he's losing quite a lot of them, and it's not like he has the better eco to replenish them easier. But honestly, I feel like Code is throwing away too much army here. Brew is sitting on 6k gold. And yeah, this army looks scary, but many of them are super weak. And you have a nice defensive position here as well for Brew, although there is a siege workshop or a siege ram coming in here soon. Siege rams are on the way, and now Scorpions line for Sicilians. Maybe Brew knows something that we don't. It's about... This Civ matchup is always about mobility versus brute force power, and now that's a good Scottish timing, I like that. Scottish gives you resources when, or depending on how much army you have. So you want to drop it when you have a lot of army, and considering that Brew went for the market up strategy and Scottish, he's gonna have 8k gold when his opponent is basically on 0. Now the Scorpions melt the Halberdiers, and while the castle does go down, we are going to see the army for Brew being more and more dominant, and especially when Code starts running out of food and gold, because gold is one thing, Code is having 29 wheels on it, but no food. And when there is no food, suddenly Sergeants actually start becoming a factor, because Sergeants have 8 pierce armor. Have archers with full upgrades here, have... what? 11 damage, so they barely do any damage to Sergeants, and... I might have underestimated Brew here. I might have severely underestimated Sicilians, because it seems like the combination of defensive castles, the ability to build TCs fast to protect your eco, and then just the brute force power of Scorpions, Halberdiers, and Sergeants might be enough, and you can push very rapidly when you drop a castle. Like that big raid coming in on the right side by Code. This is going to kill quite a lot of wheels, and Code's eco is way better. The problem for Code is that I don't see him having enough army on the field. He's having at 71 right now. Hun castles are also quite easily destroyable, so this castle is going to go down, and suddenly the base of Code will be just as open for raiding as it is the one from Brew. Code killed 20 wheels. 6 wheels is the wheel count for... or the wheel kill count for Brew. So Code, in the long run, he's gonna be able to outlast his opponent thanks to the better eco. The problem for Code is that he doesn't really have the numbers to fight this one right now. He's outnumbered 2-1. Brew's entire eco is idle, by the way. He's got 40 idols out of 50. However, now you have siege rams pushing the gold mines of the Code. Code is still 42 at gold, but guess what? This gold mine now has to be evacuated, and suddenly gold income is going to be a little bit more troublesome. Brew brings in the Halberdiers and the Sergeants to deal with this one, as Code runs into this one. Oh, that's a disaster. That's a disaster. And the thing is that the eco is way better for Code, but he's taking very inefficient engagements up until now. This is a huge one though. Brew overextended with his army, and I think that Brew is making the same mistake as he did in the previous game. He wasn't able to preserve his siege, and even though Brew is sitting on 7,000 gold, he doesn't have food or wood. And this gives some time for Code to capitalize on the otherwise massive eco lead that he has. And suddenly this starts to be once again in the favor of the Code, because now it's all about mobility. Being able to raid the opponent's eco and just make sure that he isn't able to get back to like reasonable farmer numbers. The lack of food income and the lack of wood income for Brew is disturbing. Nice quick walls from him, although there might be a hole in between the mill and the house. This is still going to be quite a lot of dead vills. Brew is doing a decent job building up his eco, and he takes down another castle, but I feel like his initial momentum might be disappearing. Code still at the somewhat underwhelming military numbers, but honestly, as I said, the big problem for Code is that he's losing so many expensive units. So it's one thing that Brew is losing a lot of Halberdiers and so, but especially the Paladins being lost is just so painful for the blue player. A couple of Tarkins are being made here by Code to try and take down those siege rams, but with Halberdiers around, that's not gonna be the thing. And Code still applying some pressure on the opponent's eco here, as the Sergeant will now come in to clean this one up. Northern part of the map secured for Brew. And Brew is also taking this gold mine. This is extremely important because neutral golds are super important. This neutral gold is in the hands of Code. Brew is on this one, but once again, I feel like Brew lost momentum. And we could get to the stage where Brew is going to be outlasted by his opponent. Because guess what? Code is on 4 relics. And Brew is about to lose his neutral gold. And suddenly Brew's gold income will be far from perfect. And he's still up against a huge amount of paladins and cav archers. So that's going to be very disturbing for Brew to fight against. It looks like he will just do one big push into the base of the opponent. This is a big gamble. But if he's able to hold here and destroy quite a lot of like this castle, these 2 TCs, he could cripple the gold income for Code. And I don't think that Code was expecting this. I don't think that Code was expecting this at all. And this is gonna come as a nasty surprise for our blue player. And well, Brew is definitely having some issues gathering gold. The thing is that he still is having a decent resource bank. Now it's gonna be a retreat by Code. Code losing quite a lot of vills here to a point where the vill count evens out. Most of the rams will go down here, so I feel like this push is going to end very soon in here, and these rams will be expensive units that are lost. But while Code was distracted, Brew is gonna be able to close the distance with the halberdiers. And the Scorpions also actually managed to get some nice shots lined up. Still, the numbers aren't there anymore for our red player. It's 50 army against 105. Population deficit is pretty considerable. And it's not the gold that's bottlenecking Brew here. It's the food and wood. He just doesn't have enough food. Onager comes out, lands a shot, but will miss the main group of cav archers in here. So for the time being, it looks like Code is going to have the advantage. And once again, if Code has the advantage, the big problem for Brew is that Code is sitting on 4 relics. So Brew is the one that is forced to decide this game really fast here. And now I feel like the mobility advantage could be huge for Code. Because one thing that the mobility advantage gives him is raiding potential. The other thing is that he can always react to what Brew is doing. Brew needs some time to muster his forces on one side, and even if he does that, Code has a very, very fast reaction because he's got a fast-moving army, and I did mention that Brew's food income was already pretty disastrous. If further pressure is applied on it, then suddenly it's going to be next to collapsing, and the castle goes up here for Brew. He really wants to secure this hill to protect the northern part of his base. The problem is that while this is happening, he is surrendering the southern part of his base. Still, huge amount of stone and gold in the bank for Brew. I just feel like he will eventually run out of gold, especially because, remember, this is the neutral gold that Brew is supposed to take. And who is taking it? Code. And I think that when it's gone, Code will send Wills forward to take this gold mine. Code is going to be able to outlast his opponent in terms of resources, as this game feels like a bit of a deja vu compared to the previous one. It just feels a little bit more snowbally. Now it looks like we'll have the Rams coming in once again, but as I said, this is Hunnic mobility. The ability that you can react to any kind of push almost instantaneously, using the fact that you have a much faster army than the opponent. And while this castle may go down, there is enough stone for Code to rebuild it, and the efficiency of this siege is going to be quite underwhelming, because you will be losing a lot of those halberdiers, champions, or sergeants in this case, to the cav archers. And now, look at this. Code arrives from the other side with hobs. I don't think that this castle will stay up, or will it? Oh, look at this. The castle barely stays up, and I feel like this is the final nail in the coffin for Brew, who is about to lose the castle here. He will take down the traps, sure, but he lost a disastrous fight here. That was probably a deciding defeat for Brew. His score is still close, so probably that's the reason why he is still staying in his game. But the fact that he is going to lose his secondary gold mine to the opponents is just not gonna crack it. He has like 20% map control. His wood eco is constantly under pressure. He doesn't really have a reliable gold income. He's just living off from the gold that he got for Scottish. That's it. Whereas his opponent has way more gold to work with. Also relics. I just feel like At this point, it's just a matter of time, and this game feels even more so snowbally than the previous one. There will be a couple of onagers queued up here for Brew, as he's hoping to somehow swing the battle in his favor with some good onager shots, but I have serious doubts that that's actually gonna happen, as this castle is slowly going down. There could be another trap coming in here for Code, but apparently he's not investing into that for now. This castle is still up in the middle for Brew to secure the northern part of his base. Onagers are now out, but it's only one onager, and look at the micro from the Code. Beautifully done. He sees the other onagers coming in, detaches a small group of cav archers to intercept them, and Brew is going to get like a 2 or 3 cav archer kills for the price of 3 or 4 onagers. And while this is happening, as I said, Code is actually just happily taking his gold. Now, the cav archers aren't particularly amazing at killing the sergeants because there's just so much pierce armor on those. However, as I said, Brew or Code can just bring in some more paladins to finish this one. Yeah, honestly, this is the old patch for Sicilians, so we're not seeing siege onagers. If there was siege onager, this matchup would definitely be slightly better for them. It's a winnable matchup. The problem was that Brew actually lost so much army in the push that actually aimed at this one, like the first push. He lost like 20 heavy scorpions, and those heavy scorpions were the units that were meant to stop the cav archers. Ever since the scorpions were gone, he had the 0 tools of stopping those CA, and that's a beautiful hill position to hold. It looks like Code is once again going to launch a big ram push against this castle. This castle is probably going to go down. I don't see Brew or Brew's rams being stopped over here. A couple of rams will go down, but this castle is history. The thing is, however, that Code is also taking down castles, which will allow him to run in with cav archers, and then it's just going to be all about taking down that castle, running in with cav archers, and crippling the eco of the opponent. We have a fight here in the middle. Still, it is just sergeants versus cav archers. The problem is that the sergeants will never be able to chase down the cav archers, and while they technically need quite a lot of arrows to take down sergeants, in large numbers, they will still be able to do that. So, for now it looks like Code's going to lose that gold mine right next to Brew's base, but still, at this point, the main problem is that he is just gonna have no protection for his farming eco. From this point on, the Code can just run in and finish off the food eco, and indeed that's gonna be the case. Here comes the cav archers, and when these guys camp in here, that's minus 15 wills. You just don't have the... Even if you react to this one as fast as possible, you're going to lose wills because the cav archers will just snap them down from the distance. Left side, we are gonna have some siege rams knocking on the doors of that castle, not really able to do much. But yeah, this is the big deal here for Brew. I just don't think that he's gonna have any tools of killing that group of cav archers. That's the main concern that we are having right now for him. Technically speaking, he's got the eco lead and the populations are still very close, but now the Hun mobility factor is going to be massive, I would say. So, what do we have here? We have another force being assembled on the left side, as Brew is going to send in some siege rams, but without protection, those will not achieve anything. So, there's a couple of sergeants. This might be the last push here for Brew, because I feel like if this fails, it's going to be over. And I don't think that he's got enough to break through this one. He's gonna be able to kill the Halberdiers, but you see that most of those army, or most of those units are down. He might be able to take down a castle or so, but I struggle to see if this is gonna be an efficient fight. I don't think so. It just feels like he might end up taking down 1 or 2 castles here. Well, 1 castle and then some buildings, but he's going to lose all the gold he has had. He's 8 on gold. His opponent has a bank of 3,000 gold, 3,000 food, whereas he's got 3,000 food as well, but no gold to work with. And from this point on, Hans can just raid you to death. Hans will have Hussar as well to work with, but I don't think that Code actually wants to go for that. Mainly because of population efficiency. He's almost pop capped, there is no point going for Hussar right now. Tarkans will also be a nice raiding unit. In fact, Tarkans might be a better raiding unit right now than Paladins are, because the extra Pierce Armor helps quite a bit just surviving the TC fire and the castle fire overall, plus they also do some more damage against buildings, which is a nice thing to have. Do buildings on fire take damage over time? Nope. Not at all. It's just a graphical representation of a damaged building. So, you will see that in a very, very moment. In castle? Come on, set on fire. It's always at a certain percentage. So you see, the castle is on fire, but it's only taking damage from the trebuchet hits. So it's not actually taking like a consistent damage. It's just from the hits of those rocks. So this is actually a nice horde of Halberdiers over here. Once the Cav Archers join the party, they won't be able to break out. I feel like this is the exact same game that we played previously. It's just the matter of Brew not being able to break out, and there is just absolutely zero chance for him to win this game unless he forces his opponent to make an enormous mistake, because every single advantage that can possibly be had in this game, the map control, the relics, the mobility advantage, the unit composition advantage is in the hands of Code. I just don't see anything that actually favors Brew here in this one. He's going for a couple of elite skirms, but Sicilian elite skirms are very underwhelming. They don't even have +4 defense. Obviously, gold efficiency might be there for them, but I don't think they will be super amazing whatsoever. Still, the Code doesn't want to lose his Cav Archers to them, but worst case scenario, he can still take like small engagements against these skirms, because the lack of armor means that the archers kill them very easily as well. You see that. How many Cav Archers died? Like 5, 10, and all those skirms are down. Basically, skirms live and die with the Pierce Armor, and it looks like this castle stays up for the time being, but even just a couple of Tarkans would be able to finish it off, especially if the repair wheels are killed, because Tarkans deal a lot of damage to buildings. So it's very possible that these Tarkans might be able to finish this building here. Instead, it looks like Code is going to divert all his forces to this southern castle. This is what controls the right side of the map, so it's understandable that he wants to keep this one up for the sake of controlling woodlines and for the sake of establishing pressure on the gold mine of Brew here. Cav Archers now arrive and should be able to clean up this army. So yeah, this is what I was referring to. I just feel like every time the Cav Archers arrive, Brew runs away. But he can never take a good engagement, because by the time he assembles a force on one side, the Cav Archers will have time to react and catch up and just chase that army down. I just don't know why Brew... Like, obviously Brew doesn't want to go down easily here. I'm just curious what he has on his mind in terms of game plan. If this was 2 versus 3 relics, even if Brew was behind by a relic, I would say, okay, he might try to outlast his opponent. But you're not doing that against 4 relics, that's for sure. Code now bringing in some pressure on the eco, both players still pop-capped. If these castles go down from Brew, he's gonna have 0 protection to his eco. He's mustering everything that he has to repair that castle, but obviously his stone count is very limited now, and now light cav will be mixed in an effort to deal with the skirmishers, as Brew is going for quite a lot of skirms here. The cavalry will be dealt with thanks to the Halberdiers. He'll control now on the side of the code, and he's gonna do what he has to, just jump into the castle with the cav archers and prevent them from getting killed by the skirms. For now, Brew is gonna be able to save that castle, but he lost all the skirmishers once again. Overall. So, let's see what else do we have here on the right side. I'm actually a little bit disappointed that we do not have any raids coming in from Code to the right side of the map. Because as things stand, he could definitely do a lot more raiding than he's doing right now. And now here come the light cav. Brew still has a pretty sizable eco, so it's not like his eco is going to collapse or anything. But it is actually perfect diversion while Code is sieging these castles. Brew is out of stone, so repairs will no longer be possible on those. So, right side, we're gonna have Halberdiers cleaning up the light cavalry for the time being. Brew still 123 eco overall. And now, if the Halberdiers go down, the light cav can just jump on the skirmishers trap, once again being set up to take that castle down. Brew wants to start adding light cavalry. The problem is that, like, the Hunnic Hussar are way better than Sicilian light cavalry. So, all that Code needs to do is just make sure that he keeps track of those light cavalry with his Hussar. So, Brew shouldn't even be able to raid, and it's a very, very nice move to use those cav archers in an effort to prevent the Hussar or light cav from jumping on top of that trap. Now, it looks like Brew will try a bit of a raiding here, but it's only a couple of light cavalry, so the castle fire, the TC fire, and a couple of Hussars will clean them up. Now, this could be a bit of a misplay here by the Code, because he could lose that trap to the light cav. This trap will stay alive for the time being. Brew actually has to buy some stone to repair this one, which is awfully expensive. And now the light cav arrive from the other side. I just feel like it's a slow and painful death here for a red player. And when this castle goes down, he might even resign, because he should start feeling that he's gonna have very, very little chance of winning this game. Like, it's less than 1% for Brew right now. Loses another castle here, and Code doesn't have to play this one aggressive. That's the big deal. He can just sit back, play this one slowly, as this game is also now an hour-long game, but that's basically because Brew is trying to play very resilient, even though he is technically having very, very little chance of winning this game. As I said, light cav raids won't work very well because Huns have Halberdiers and Huns have Hussar that are better than light cav, so all you have to do is just keep track of those light cavs with a couple of cav archers or Hussar, and they shouldn't do a lot of damage. And now I feel like Code is ready to deal the finishing blow. Look at this, Brew is even repairing those TCs here, because he knows exactly that if those go down, his farming eco is going to be wide open for raiding. The big deal though is this castle. If this castle goes down, it doesn't matter that you have TCs here, because from that point on, light cav archers can just run in, and Brew knows this as well. Brew knows that he has to stop this castle from being destroyed, although he doesn't commit to this fight just yet. Code trying to loop around, try to find a good angle on the skirms, as right now the problem for our red player is that he doesn't have a huge amount of skirms on the field here, and now the light cav will catch the edge of that group of skirms. This might be the final fight of the game, because Brew is severely outnumbered over here, and his unit composition is far from sufficient to beat this one. Just 14 skirms won't win you the fight, so it's very possible that Code can just commit to this one and say, okay, it's time to finish this. Brew will try his best to get some cav archer kills, and he's doing a very, very nice job here, but I think that Code might have even committed to that, given the fact that he's sitting on 4 relics. I don't blame him for playing a little safer, but I think that's something that he could have committed to. And now, there is no castles protecting the farming eco. Brew is gonna have to relocate the entire thing. He's trying with raids, but his opponent is sitting on a fairly sizable resource bank, although Brew is also at 11k food. If only he was Burgundians for Burgundian vineyards, right? Honestly, the more I look at it, the more I feel like Code is also struggling a little bit closing out the game. Because he doesn't really have an answer to this Halberdier and Skirmisher unit composition. I could see some Scorpions from Code working here. He's got the gold for Scorpions, and his opponent has absolutely nothing that deals with Scorpions. Even just 5 Scorps should be enough to absolutely annihilate the army of Brew here. That's actually going to be 1 trap down, but I think that the entire army of Brew will be sacrificed in order to try and preserve those. That's the only relic that he has, and that relic monastery is now open. And now we will have some Hussar coming in on the north. This is what Code was waiting for. He was massing a huge force of Hussar on the left side of the map, and he will send them directly into the opponent's base. Now, crippling the red player's eco here won't do much for you, because he still has 6,000 wood and 12,000 food in his bank, so he's gonna be able to spam skirms and halves forever. But honestly, being able to take down that monastery would be extremely important for our blue player, because that extra bit of gold still helps quite a bit for Brew. He's using that to buy stone to repair the castles. He's using that to get some gold units on the field, like rams and so, as we have some more light cav raids over here. Still, as things stand, focus the monastery. The monastery even has been ejected. Look at this. Brew is actually escorting that remaining relic to a safer monastery that he's building right here. He doesn't want to lose that relic, but that's not gonna be the case. Code spots it. Code saw that very, very nicely, and he knows that, hey, my opponent is trying to save that relic. Brew is still doing a nice job with the raiding, and one thing I have to say is that, first of all, why do you have 2 wheels for Code here, or for Brew? I have no idea, he probably misclicked them. Number 2 is that Code's food bank isn't impressing me, so he's gonna be careful, because he's actually taking some very inefficient fights here with the Hussar being massacred by the Halberdiers. And his food bank, as I said, is not as impressive as you want it to be. Brew actually found some refuge on the northern part of the map, but Brew is running out of resources here to chop in terms of wood. Keep in mind that Sicilians have super long-lasting farms, so that will start to become a thing in wood efficiency. And look at Code. This is one of the reasons why he's so good as a player in that match. Because he's just so resilient with this, and in the moment he sees an opportunity to seize a relic, he will take it. And he will take it like all the way back home, but the key is that his opponent is never gonna have that relic back. Only 73 wills though for the Code, and his resource bank isn't looking great, so if there is any chance for Brew, that's gonna be crippling his opponent's food eco and then using the skirms to pick off the cav archers. Because one thing that's still there for Brew is a massive resource bank. Whereas on the other side, there is very, very little in the bank, especially in terms of food for the Code. The wood is looking nice, but food is somewhat underwhelming for him. Hussar now, once again coming in. The thing is that Code is still losing, or Code is still winning quite a lot of map control here, but Code is getting his eco crippled. I may have spoken too soon, because this is a very, very scary blob of death, but Code is just refusing to make any counter unit to skirms and hubs. Like, he's making Hussar to try and snap the skirms and then cav archers to deal with the Halberdiers, but that's not really going to work out well for him. I think some Scorpions with light cav support would have been slightly better, and the thing is that, as I said, Code is gonna struggle replenishing his army soon. His opponent at least has the resource to do it, although it seems like there is no production now for Brew. For whatever reason, he's out of production. He has a massive eco lead though. And Code, honestly, Code's food eco is getting close to collapsing. And without meat shield, those cav archers will die to skirmishers. Brew could actually edge this out. It's a very, very slim chance, and if Code plays this one right, he should never lose this game. Code needs to make sure that, like, he should start walling himself up. He's got a bunch of stone. Start stonewalling your base, getting your farming eco back on track. If you do that, there's no way Brew wins this game. The only way Brew wins this game is if Code is just starved out of food, and I don't think that's gonna happen, and that's not something that Code should allow to happen. Still, huge resource bank for Brew. So even losing a couple of wheels here won't really change things that much. Production buildings being lost will hurt a little bit more though, because this will result in a little bit slower production for Brew, and you see that he's gonna have to rebuild barracks and ranges here to be able to just match the numbers of army that he's encountering on the field. And now the Hussar apparently will find a nice angle to attack on the skirmishers. Cav archers will pick off the remaining halberdiers, and this is a beautiful sandwich here by TheCode. Not a fight that Brew can afford to take. He keeps sending in light cavalry into the opponent's eco, and he's doing so very nicely, but I feel like he's just losing ground a little too fast here, and Code still has 1000 food in the bank, so I feel like he can actually hold out against this one, especially with 5 relics under his possession. So 5 relics here is just enormous for TheCode. It could allow him to get a couple of paladins out, and a couple of paladins would have the same mobility as light cav here, and they would be so powerful that you don't need a lot of them to clean this up. So paladins could be a very population efficient way of dealing with those light cav raids, although it is indeed a disturbing sight that we only have 66 wheels for Code, but that also means that he's got about 130 army on the field, as another castle is gonna fall Brew little too late to repair, and now the Trebs will start shutting TCs. Soon, Brew is going to struggle for resource control, so you see that he's consuming the final bits of resources left on the map, and the resource-rich southern area is entirely in the hands of TheCode, who is getting repelled here in this counterattack with the skirmishers and the halberdiers. There's still a sizable force of cav archers left, numbering 55, but yeah, those traps being lost is going to be annoying for Code. So, now it's going to be Hussar raids coming in. Resource bank is still extremely good for Brew, so it's going to take quite a lot of time until Code grinds down his resources, but at this pace, that's basically what's gonna happen, because soon Code is gonna have all the wood to work with. He's still mining stone. Code needs a castle here like ASAP, and maybe even a castle here, because the thing is that Code is just struggling to keep his eco alive. He has to bother so much cleaning up the raids inside his eco that is distracting him from his actual direct push. The Hussar will now find an angle on the skirms to a certain extent, as sergeants reappear on the field for Brew. I feel like you just need scorpions here for Code. Just a couple of scorpions would be so devastating against everything that Brew has. Some more barracks on the way for Brew. He is still sitting on 13k wood and 7k wood over here, as he keeps raiding the opponent's food eco. So there's still 51 on food for TheCode, so it's not the end of the world, although it is starting to be a little bit disturbing for TheCode that he's only at 140 population. He doesn't really have a huge military queue either, so while he has a big death blob over here, he doesn't really have an answer to Halberdier Skirmisher. And simultaneously, if he loses all his eco, his opponent will just grind him down eventually in resources, and Brew's resource bank is much better. The problem for Brew right now is that he needs to take down these castles to secure some map control for some more wood. Otherwise, that's gonna be very much insufficient. So this is just sort of the type of stalemate when one player is supposed to win, but he's unable to push, and the other one is just raiding too much. Well, not too much, but the other player is raiding so much that he feels like he still has a chance coming back. So neither of the players obviously want to give up on this, but neither of them are pushing forward either. So we're gonna have the castle up here, trying to help. I don't understand why Code is not adding some stone walls here. Even just a couple of stone walls would limit the opponent's movement, and now it looks like Brew is launching a huge attack into the base of Code, and keep in mind that if Code loses his eco, he's gonna have a tough time replenishing that army. And while he still has a very scary blob of cav archers, those cav archers are completely distracted. And Brew knows this. Brew knows this, and I feel like, given the advantage that Code has, he should have won this game by now, and it looks like Brew's resilience might actually pay off here in this game. It didn't pay off in the previous one, but when that castle goes down, suddenly the eco for Code is very exposed, and as I said, there's little response to Halberdier and Skirmisher, and these are actually awful skirms. And honestly, even if Code just made his own skirms, those would be better, because Huns have at least +4 defense. But Code is not doing anything to deal with those skirms other than adding light cav, but Halberdier and Skirmisher will beat Cav Archer light cav in most cases. And that's a nice raid over here from Code, picking off a couple of wheels from Brew. Brew's still at 10k food count. His opponent has a reasonable bank as well now, a couple of sergeants coming in on the right side to raid. Oh, they don't have it? Oh yeah, I confused it with Parthian tactics, indeed. They're missing +4 defense, but they have Parthian, that's why they show it on the Cav Archers. Still, now that we see it on the field, my bad. Indeed, they don't have it. Still, like, it's still better to make skirms and just trade here, given the advantage that you have, compared to just suiciding light cavalry into halberdiers in an effort to try and finish off those skirmishers. Now it seems like the momentum is sort of disappearing for Brew here. He's down to 49 army, 122 population. He does have the eco, or the resource bank, to produce more units though, so it's probably a production bottleneck that we are facing over here. He's also stealing some wood here from this wood line. He's just trying to grab every bit of resource that he can. He's still up against 5 relics though. I mean, I value his resilience, but as long as this group of Cav Archers are alive, and as long as his opponent is on 5 relics, this victory is just a distant dream for him. It is a very, very distant dream, in fact. This set has been like 2 hours already, and it is just game number 2 here in a best of 7. This could be a long set. Now, Skirmishers actually find some value here against the Cav Archers. It's actually a very, very good fight for Brew. A little bit sloppy from our blue player over here, because you don't want to throw away Cav Archers to Skirmishers like that. On the south, we still have a nice map control over for Code. Army numbers climbing back up for Brew. The problem for Brew starts to begin that his resource bank is dropping. So yeah, he has had a huge amount of resource to work with, but that is sort of disappearing now. At 5k food he is, and about 4k wood. Especially wood is gonna be a serious problem. He's just unable to access more wood. He could try sneaking a couple of wheels out here, but look at the Code. Code even has a stable here, an outpost, because he knows that his opponent will have to move in here to secure some wood for himself. And Sicilian farming eco is going to help quite a bit at preserving that wood, so the longer lasting farms are extremely helpful here. But it's still a matter of time, I believe, until Brew runs out of resources entirely. Because at this pace, that's what's gonna happen. He's down to 2000 food. He still has quite a lot of farming eco, so I would say there is at least 10-15 minutes in game until Brew runs out of resources entirely. However, his opponent is still on 5 relics, and that helps an awful lot. So that helps getting siege weapons out, taking out the remaining castles. Now Hussar raid coming in on the left side. And now that the food bank isn't that huge for Brew, that's suddenly not something that he can afford to take. And what a play from Code. This could be a seal the deal type of a move here. Sniping at least one of the traps, the other trap will survive. But the fact that he was able to snipe traps delays this push so much, and he's got the time to react to it. The intentions from Brew are obvious. He wants to take this castle down to secure this area so that he can access wood. By the way, while he's not watching though, he's getting his entire food eco collapsed. He was focusing on so much at preserving that trap and keeping his army in a nice fighting position that he's down to 38 eco. And he still has 1000 food in the bank, but I feel like when this army is gone, there's gonna be 0 chance for Brew to replenish it. Brew is absolutely not paying attention to his eco here, and I think if this push stalls out here, he's going to look at his population and say, okay, I lost this. Which I think that was something that was predictable. I mean, his opponent had both neutral gold mines. He had like majority map control, 5 relics. It was very, very likely. As I said, Brew has like a less than 1% chance of winning, yet the game still dragged out for 1.5 hours. Brew is at 160 population, 130 of those is army. This is still a scary horde, like a lot of light cav, skirmishers, halberdiers, but skirms trying to dive in, snipe the cav archers. Cav archers picking off the halberdiers, a couple of paladins hit the field. The momentum is still here for Brew, but as I said, replenishing this army is just not an option. And the cav archers can always run away to fight another day, help until reinforcements come in. And population is dropping really rapidly here for Brew. This castle still standing, the cav archers can seek refuge in it, as now the population of Brew is at 92. He has 32 villagers, he has queued up 20, so he realized that, oh shoot, I lost all my eco, but against 5 relics, I just don't think that he's got enough. The population is still relatively close, but once those cav archers engage these halberdiers will disappear and they will never again reappear on the field, because our red player has absolutely no economy left to replenish them, especially the food eco missing is important. He still has 29 on food, but I feel like the next wave of units from Code should be able to finish off Brew here. 82 population and dropping dramatically. These light cavs here shouldn't do that much either. So Brew is playing super resilient, but I have to say that this game I think was gone for him for the last 30 minutes or so. The civ advantage I think is on the side of Huns, but especially with 5 relics and majority map control, I just don't think that there's anything going in that's favoring our red player. You see that he's just constantly dropping in population. He's trying to get his eco back on track up to 44 villas, but that's going to take quite a lot of time until he does that. And indeed, the Code emerges victorious as game number 2 ends. Oh boy, that was a long one. That was a long one. I think if you just look at this number, 32,000 gold versus 15,000, that is clearly telling why Code must have this win. That's like 5 relics is not something you can fight against like that in post-team DM. So once the gold runs out of the map, if one player has 5 relics, it's going to be nearly impossible for the other to redeem himself. Now, the next up is going to be the home map of Code, because this was the home map of Brew. Let's see if they are actually playing. Apparently not. And it looks like now they are setting up a game. Golden Swamp. That's gonna be Code's home map in here. I'm going to take a half-a-minute break because I want to run to the bathroom for a moment. But they are setting up the next game right now. Golden Swamp, Brew versus Code, who also, apparently, speaking of Brew, joined Quendi, one of the bigger deathmatch clans that are out there. So, Code versus Brew in game number 3. And it looks like they're also taking a break. I wanted to see if they start and then join into the lobby so that we can sort of have that countdown thing going in. But it looks like they are not starting yet. So yeah, I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so let's see if we have the game. Indeed, we do. So we're going to Golden Swamp in a Tatars versus Lithuanians mirror, it seems. Okay, so how do we feel about that mirror? This is Code's home map. He has given Lithuanians as Tatars as an option for Brew to choose from. Tatars was the one that Brew selected. I can see why. Tatars will have the extra range on their traps, which can be very, very helpful in this situation. They have a very, very nice arrow tanking unit, the Keshik. So even though we're going to have quite a lot of water fighting here, the Keshik will be an extremely useful force for sniping traps, for potentially having them as a meat shield overall. So I think I actually like Tatars here more as well. I think that's the better civ of the two. Although it also depends on what the Lithuanian player is gonna plan on, because when will be the Viper game? After this, I think it's scheduled to start after this. So Viper versus Rage is the winners bracket finals, and it's probably going to be after this set. I'm not sure if they delay it or so. I don't have any information on that, but I would say that they probably do. So that's what we're gonna have to build on. All right, so we will jump into game number 3 over here as we welcome you back in Capture Rage. Right side will be Brew as Tatars in red, opening with quite a lot of stables. The left side is going to be TheCode with Halberdiers opening as Lithuanians. Both of those make quite a lot of sense for these respective civilizations. Oftentimes when you see Lithuanians in Deathmatch, you see them with Cav Archers because Lithuanian Cav Archers are almost fully upgraded, but I don't think that we will see them a lot here because Tatars Cav Archers are miles ahead in quality, as we're gonna have the first docks already coming out. Interestingly, Brew is opening right away with a galleon, no demo ships whatsoever, and he is still doing a nice job running around, trying to find the Vil to pick off. Now, given the fact that he's opening heavy camos here, he might actually try to intercept the Vil on the docks, and as I said, he already has 2 docks up, early castle coming in overall, and it looks like this could be the first Vil casualty, and these are the key moments in a Golden Swamp game. Delaying the opponent's docks hurts so much, because it looks like you are already gonna have 4 docks up for our red player as Cav Archers and some heavy camos will be out already, but the most important thing is the ship numbers. Now, one thing that you have to consider is that the Lithuanian Halberdiers can easily overrun your fleet. So, as the Halberdiers are doing bonus damage against ships, it's actually very possible to see these Halberdiers overrun those galleons, and that's exactly what we saw. 0 demos right now from Brew here, which is a bit surprising. Just 1 or 2 demos could do so much damage here. So, we're gonna have the Camels coming in here trying to do some raiding damage, but pretty much get sandwiched. Oh, this is a disaster for Brew. This is an absolute disaster. He gets all his Camels trapped and most of them go down. Oh, that was so unlucky. I think there is a hole here, but for whatever reason, the Camels refuse to go through there. A castle coming in here early though for Brew. And remember, just as much as Britons are very, very capable of holding the middle thanks to Warwolf traps, the extra range on the Tatar traps can also result in similar holds. And now the Cav Archers pick up the Halberdiers, Camos dealing decent damage against the Paladins, and there is also a couple of Galleons. I think that Brew should mix in a couple of demos though, because there's so many infantry units on the field that you could have just 2 or 3 demos sing this entire thing. Still, Brew, I think, has caught the start a little bit better. He has killed 6 villagers, only lost 2, so he's got a nice and comfy villager lead. Already making a castle in the middle, dropping the Tatar guard towers. Right side, it looks like Brew will try to drop castles, but this will be denied by our blue player, TheCode. We also still have the camels on the far left. And this is a nice find, as I said, for TheCode. Still 7-8 villagers lead right now for Brew. And one of the nice things about Tatars, alongside many other things, is that you also get the sheep for your town centers, which means that it is fairly easy to kickstart your food eco once you start running out of food. You don't have to add farms super early. Now, it's worth pointing out that Brew is running out of gold. He started selling some resources himself. But what I love about Brew's position is the amount of buildings that he's building here. So it's not just one castle, he's making siege workshops, and every building you build in the middle or close to the middle allows you to protect your or preserve your foothold for a little longer and prevent your opponent from taking the middle very easily. Brew, 42 eco compared to 28 from our blue player. So better army numbers for Brew, better eco count for our red player as well. Gold count is much more convincing though for the code, as here come a couple of siege rams that will take down that only keep, that keeps away our red player from securing the middle. And as things stand, I love how you reinforce the middle with multiple towers. Still no demos from Brew here though, which is a bit surprising, but one of the nice things, I think I said this 5 times for Tatars here, but another nice thing with Tatars is that they have siege ram, and Lithuanians only have kept ram, as the cav archers dive in to try and snipe a couple of vills. And that means that you have a couple of siege ram that can soak up arrow fire from the ships so easily. That is a massive difference compared to Lithuanians that only have kept ram, which still can do the job, but siege rams are way better at soaking up arrow fire like that. And it looks like Brew is gonna be the first one to colonize the middle. I love how he still keeps a couple of cav archers here, because if your opponent moves to the stone mine over here, you will pick off a couple of vills. Nice and easy. Towers also helping quite a bit, taking down the ships. And the last thing that actually is making Tatars super strong on this map is Kashik. Kashik is an excellent unit, like, it's super tanky, but the bigger thing with it is that it is actually extremely cheap. It's a very cheap unit that resists a lot of arrow fire, and that allows Kashiks to be used as a unit that just soaks up the arrow fire from the galleons. Now, speaking of galleons, we talk about 42 versus 41. We also have cannon galleons, though, coming in from the code, so he's ready to besiege those towers. In fact, he already started taking down those. Still, the army numbers aren't really here for the code, and as I said, the siege rams are doing so much work here. Absorbing the damage. Now the Hussar are coming in. These are Tatar Hussar, which have silk armor, so they also have a bit more pierce armor, allowing them to resist a little bit more arrow fire from both the towers and the galleons. Kamikaze villager joining the fight as well, and will probably have a very ugly and painful death. And I think in this case you can actually make a case for Brew diving in to snipe those cannon galleons, because those are fairly expensive units. For now, Brew has a firm control over the middle, 30 population lead overall. And what is this from Brew? That's all his sheep from beneath his town centers. I have absolutely no idea if that's intentional or a misclick, because those sheep could be helpful. Those sheep could be very helpful. Kashik now coming in to do the raid. By the way, we have 2 relics for code, so his latest will have +2 attack from that, on top of the +4. For now, it is 30 galleons as opposed to 32, so the galleon numbers are still there for both sides. Cav archers, nice raid over here from Brew, denying the wood line, and so far in every single game, Brew had a moment where he had the advantage. But then it just sort of slipped out of his grasp, so to say. Because, after all, Code was able to hold, and Brew just committed so much to those pushes that he kind of ran out of juice. In this case, he doesn't need to be super aggressive. especially given the position that he has in the middle already. I like how he's already having a couple of veers on gold. In fact, I would love to see him sending a lot more on gold here. Take the middle gold as long as you have it. It's not even a big deal if you leave these gold mines over here, because those will be a good emergency backup for you. And now the siege rams start knocking on the docks, and that's where things get really rough for TheCode. Because once he starts losing those docks, replenishing the ships will be just a distant dream. And after that, he's just gonna have no tools of contesting the middle. It looks like his fleet is gonna get sandwiched from two directions, even though Brew's fleet is mostly distracted on the far left. You got cannon galleons being added as well. Timuri's siegecraft, by the way, doesn't affect cannon galleons, as a fun fact. Which I think is the probably predictable way, but still, unlike some upgrades that affect both bombard cannons and cannon galleons, Timuri's siegecraft doesn't. And now you have the Keshik to have a cheap arrow sponge, and the ships to finish off the ships for TheCode. A little bit of a sloppiness here from Brew, miscoordinating his moves. A trap will be lost in the process. And I have to say that Brew is running out of army here a little bit. I'm not so convinced on his ship numbers, I have to say. Despite the fact that he's floating 4,000 gold. So he is actually floating a huge amount of gold here in this one. So, let's see what we have. We have towers still being attempted by TheCode, and he still has a sizable fleet, 54 compared to merely 38. And I once again feel like Brew might be underinvesting into this one. He's pop-capped, but where is that population at? It's probably in these hussars, in these camels. These units. He needs to use these units to something, because if he isn't, then it's just wasted population. And if he wastes population here, he's endangering his position in the middle. He needs all his units focused in the middle, because you see that code, as he's running out of gold, he's going to try one big push in the middle, and the castle is going down. This might be a misplay here from Brew, because he is having a bunch of units pretty much useless here. I mean, they're not completely useless, but you need all your forces in the middle right now, because your opponent has a larger fleet than you do, and you already lost one of your castles, despite the fact that you technically have traps with Timurate siegecraft on them. So you have the range advantage. And I feel like Code might once again start prevailing in this one. Still 2 relics for TheCode. He could pick up a third one. I would like to point out that I think Brew needs to pick these 2 relics up here, because he's up against Lithuanians, and also every bit of gold matters so much in this one. The TC is being molten, and guess what? Brew lost the middle. Brew lost the middle, and I feel like now we have even ship numbers. The Lithuanian Paladins with +6 will suddenly become a lot more viable option here for Code. Code's food eco isn't amazing, but he's got the momentum. And once again, the ships here are just going down really rapidly. These halberdiers being able to close the distance. Look at this fleet getting annihilated. Code is having a massive momentum. Now, he also has keeps as opposed to guard towers, so they are actually way better at killing ships. And Brew is at 38 ships, he's got 17 more queued up, but now the player that's on a timer is on Brew, because he has absolutely no gold income if he runs out of gold back at home, which will happen in the next couple of moments. And the timing on this map is so important. It doesn't matter how long you control the middle, you have to control it when the opponent runs out of gold. Because in that case, you will be the one with gold and he won't. So this might be the perfect time for Code to control the middle, as he's just spamming towers everywhere, still not picking up that final relic, but now he will commit to this one. A castle comes in here for Brew in an effort to re-establish control over the middle. Ship numbers are still very close, but there's a huge amount of towers and halberdiers in here as well. And the halberdiers help so much at just taking down some of the ships, because the ships are mostly focusing on the opponent's ships. So Halberdiers can join the fun, and the other thing is towers, as I said, being able to melt those buildings. So now, how do you even break through this? I don't think you can, because it takes so much time for traps to take down those keeps. And siege rams could be a solution, but there's enough halberdiers to destroy those. And as I said, at this point, Brew is losing momentum, and it's very possible that we could be in for a 3-0 here. In the first matchup of these two players, Brew 4-0'd Code. Apparently Code learned from his mistakes in that set. It was a massive upset. So yeah, that's actually an interesting debate. How is it possible that he got 4-0'd? I think Code just had a bad day there. Brew is playing well, but Code is playing better than him right now. So I can imagine Code having a bad day and Brew having a great day to result in a 4-0 in their first set. But right now, it seems like we're getting closer and closer to a 3-0 because Brew is running out of gold. Will you keep casting this match or switch to Viper Rage? I think I will keep casting this set and then catch up with Viper versus Rage. So that's probably going to be the plan. Especially because as things stand, this is getting closer and closer to a 4-0, but you never know. Brew has had some very, very close series in this one, and this castle's going down. Once again, I feel like Brew might try to drag this one out in a hope that he can actually somehow redeem himself in here, but I just don't think that this is going to work for him either. This ship has sailed away to just have a good comparison here. He still has 33 galleons, but he's up against 47 and he's got absolutely no gold to work with. 0 relics. He can sell, that's his best thing to do, but selling here won't work because guess what? His opponent has a huge amount of gold. So, as things stand, all he needs to do is just hold the middle as the final bits of gold of Brew are being spent on Kashyyyk to try and take down those trebs. The trebs are meant to take down the towers, and there is quite a lot of those 19 range trebs over here to take down these keeps. We may have spoken a little too soon, because Code isn't able to commit to a fight here because of the towers that are still up for Brew, and Code is losing quite a lot of towers here. Still, Code is on 3 relics, so he's got basically infinite gold, 3 relics with Lithuanians, which means basically infinite paladins for him. As now he will commit to this fight. Brew is on a massive timer here, that's the thing. Even if he... even if Code doesn't have the entire island under his control, the thing is that all he needs to do is just make sure that Brew isn't able to get gold for himself. That's all he needs to do. Just delay this one as much as possible with paladins, and every single gold unit that Brew loses is going to hurt so much. Like, he's already selling resources. Not a single relic. The only source of gold right now for Brew is selling. And the thing is that Lithuanian paladins, especially now the market is bottoming down, I think that this fight might be the decider. The ship numbers are still slightly better for Brew, but after all, he's gonna have 0 tools of replenishing this, and when the towers go down, suddenly Code can commit to this fight. In fact, Code already started committing to this, taking down quite a decent amount of ships, as Brew will once again attempt to push the middle, but he's up against paladins when he only has light cavalry, and he will never break through these lines of paladins. Tatar Halberdiers are awful because they have just 1 armor, so they die to the towers, they die to everything, and as I said, all Code needs to do is just make sure that his opponent cannot mine gold. A couple of towers on this island is not really a big deal overall. So yeah, at this point, especially when the market prices are down to 17, it's going to do... It's not going to be sufficient for Brew. Like, Code is banking up a huge amount of resources, he's bringing in trebs to take down those towers, and he knows exactly that he just needs to keep away Brew from this gold in the middle. Code doesn't have a super reliable gold income either, but it's still better than nothing, right? So He's got 3 relics, he's got these Voyagers being safe, and slowly those towers are going down. I just feel like, once again, Brew is trying to win a game that is lost. And so far it's 0 out of 2, and I feel like we're getting close to 0 out of 3 here. He's trying to access a bit of a gold, but these wheels are just getting slaughtered, and you see that every ground that he gained, he loses it in 20 seconds, because he's got 0 answer to, like, +7 Lithuanian Paladins overrunning him. And if he has no gold, he's gonna have 0 chance of winning this game. This map is not winnable if you don't have gold in the middle. In fact, I'm surprised he's still playing this. This might be the final effort, because he's sending more and more wheels trying to get a tower up, but I mean, even this tower is just gonna melt to these 2 traps here. For now, Code is focusing down this one, but now the towers will switch. And when these towers go down from Brew, Code will commit with everything he has against the fleet of his opponent, knowing that it doesn't matter how many ships he loses, because his opponent won't be able to replenish them. So it's all about that now for Code. He knows exactly that once the towers are down, he can commit against that fleet. 28 galleons versus 38, so a pretty sizable fleet still remaining for Brew. But after all, there is just no gold access for Brew. He's trying his best to do just get a tiny bit of land control, but there is just none given to him. And in fact, if Code actually focused a little bit more on Paladins, I think Code could even delete some whales, or send them to a suicide mission to mine gold here. That's probably even better than just going for deletions, but Code has a massive overboom here. I don't blame him for it, because he's banking up as many resources as he can in case his opponent actually ended up being able to push him off from the island. But as I said, now there is no towers protecting those galleons, and this is the moment where Code has to commit. So... and with that, we are gonna have 3-0 over here for the Code. Looks like he might actually 4-0 his opponent over here, which would be a bit of a surprise after Brew 4-0'd Code in their first matchup. It's all about the gold. It is all about the gold. Will we never see Fireship in DM? Too weak? Exactly. Fireships die to demos. So sometimes you see them, but galleons are a lot more general purpose than fireships are. I'm actually surprised that Brew had the same amount of gold as the Code, but still, he had 0 chance of securing the middle. And without the middle, you don't have this game. So now we're gonna go to the home map of Brew once again, and we're going back to the mirror stages. That is where it gets scary for Brew, because in a mirror setup... Wait a second, this is game number 4. Game number 4 should be player behind in score after game number 3 picks home map and Civ. That's exactly what should happen. But as you see, it's Lithuanians and Portuguese here, so I guess Code was Lithuanian, so probably it's going to be Portuguese mirror on Golden Swamp once again. That's going to be potentially the final game of this set, because right now we have a 3-0 scoreline in favor of the Code. Indeed, they're setting up Portuguese, so they will get going with this game in a matter of moments. I'm actually somewhat disappointed that the games are overlapping with each other. Like, obviously, it's getting late, for example, for Viper. So that's actually a little bit sad that we have overlaps. That's my biggest criticism towards this tournament. Same thing for last weekend. There are so many good sets that it hurts to just miss some because they are overlapping with each other. Many of these sets are actually excellent, but you're limited to cast a couple of them because, guess what? You just can't be everywhere. So 140 remaining from the spec countdown. After this set, we'll most likely switch to the Viper versus Rage set. we will see what's up with that. So, let's go. US galleons too fast? Yes and no. It's more about the fact that in the majority of the cases, demos are added pretty early because the players are opening with some land units like Cavalier, like Halberdier, whatsoever. After Viper vs. Rage, will I cast the losers, or I think it's the losers bracket semis? Yes, I will do all day Deathmatch World Cup. So we'll cast everything that's not overlapping with something else. That's the point. And tomorrow we have, I think, the Grand Finals. The Grand Finals are, the way that it's going to be done tomorrow is that 14 GMT is the losers bracket finals. Then there's a show match at 16 and Grand Finals at 18 GMT. That's the standard. Yeah, there's a lot of tournaments coming up as well. Like World Desert Championship is getting close to an end. I will also do some stuff with that. Red Bull qualifiers and things like that. All right, Portuguese Mirror coming in here on Golden Swamp. This is where you kind of have to make a decision early on. Caravels or Galleons? That's your decision point in this one. We'll have the code on the left side as blue, and the right side will be our red player with a capture H freeze, Brew. So Portuguese are not really villager snipe heavy civilizations. Their light cavs are not really amazing at doing that. Although you can open a stable and go for Cavalier, because the Portuguese Cavalier is fully upgraded and it's even cheap on the gold cost, so that's definitely something that you can use to snipe wills. Speaking of sniping villagers, that's actually a nice find from Brew in this one. Other side, you're gonna have Brew coming in here with some stables. In fact, he's very, very heavy on the stables. Neither of the players are actually going for a huge amount of docks to begin with, which is a bit of a surprise. The first dock comes in here for Code, and we'll have the first dock coming in as well for Brew. As we will see if he actually intercepts some wills on those docks, because intercepting the docking wheels is probably the best way to gain an advantage in a Golden Swamp DM. Brew now is ahead by 2 wheels, so he definitely was able to get some damage done, and that could be free. That's an excellent start for Brew. He loses one in exchange, and there's a chance he might lose another, and another one could be going down here, so all that advantage could be gone in just a split second as Code retaliates with slaying 4 wheels from his opponent, make it even 5, and now you got docks up already, and you see the demos are immediately queued up. And here's the problem for Brew. He's late with the docks because he had to kind of hold this villager in a place where he's actually safe, and that it's only able to build that castle. Another wheel goes down, another wheel goes down. It's 7 wheels killed by the Code. He's tearing Brew apart here. And on this map, it's so important to get those early wheel numbers advantage, because once you have that, you can actually get your docks up faster, and once you have your docks up faster, you will have a fleet earlier and you can actually secure middle control a lot easier. It looks like we'll have a big counterattack coming in here from Brew. The demos have not spotted that just yet, and this could be a huge counterattack here indeed. That could slay quite a lot of villagers from the Code, who right now possesses a 2 villagers lead. Overall, Brew is very, very heavy on Cavalier, so he seems like he understands that he can't actually fight this one with ships, but he's gonna be real careful with the Cavalier, because if he's not paying attention, then he's just going to have all his Cavaliers slain by demos. You're gonna have a quick wall not happening, and this is a nice counterattack from Brew. Finding one will, he could actually send the Cavalier to finish off that one, but apparently he's not doing that right now, and more Cavalier are pushing in. So it looks like we're gonna have a full land play here by Brew. Code is gonna have to dispatch quite a lot of Halberdiers to stop this one. Why is the picture of Guide head in a castle? It's a long story, but that's Doubt's face. Doubt is famous off his castle building in Age of Empires. That's why it's his face on that castle. Everyone in the pro scene uses this mod for memes. Now, speaking of memes, it's not really a meme that you're going to lose all your views making that castle. So, now, Code is down to 6 views. This Cavalier counterattack is actually going to do quite a lot of damage in here. And there is more to come after this one. So Halberdiers will be on the way for Code. And now, ship numbers evening out. Brew getting housed here for a moment. We're gonna have keeps already crawling forward for the Code. Still a huge amount of Cavalier out here for Brew, but one thing that you have to consider is that these Cavalier take gold away from you. So I actually like Code's position better because he's killing gold units with Halberdiers. And that gold will be a massive difference maker once you look at the middle, where there will be demos coming in. And one thing that you always have to keep in mind, first of all, the fact that the demos will annihilate the entire fleet here for Code. This is a way better game so far for Brew. So one thing that you have to highlight is that caravels struggle a lot more against demo ships than galleons do. So that's the main problem that you're facing when you're going for full caravel. The good news is that if you can spread out your ships, then that can help quite a bit, and we have bombard cannons already being brought in by the Code. Will help quite a bit taking down those ships, especially because they basically have ballistics on bombard cannon as well. Halberdiers will be absolutely slaughtered here. So caravels are just like scorpions on water, which means that they will just annihilate infantry. It doesn't work as good as it does against galleons. That being said, the ships of Brew lined up pretty nicely, and that allows Code to take some nice shots on them. The bombard cannons seemingly will be destroyed by the light cavalry, and it looks like some cannon galleons will meet their maker as well. Eco is now much better for Brew. So he's up to 40, army number is actually very, very close, so is the army value. Demos trying to dive in now for Code will be intercepted before they can actually get a connection in. But now both players actually trying to get some foothold in the middle, though we have some siege for Code in here in the middle that allows him to take down those towers, or at least slow down the opponent's expansion towards the middle. 24 galleons, or caravels in this case, versus 27 is the count. As things stand, it looks like Brew will be able to push back Code, but breaking through those towers is going to take some time, especially because the trebs will be taken down by bombard cannons. And notice this force from Code. This force could actually hit the eco of Brew, although Brew has a nice castle here, and that's going to help quite a bit. Brew is up to 37 caravels, whereas his opponent is only at 15, and this is the first game where Brew is actually having a massive lead in this one. So, as things stand, Brew has to capitalize on this fleet, bring in some ships, either cannon galleons or potentially trebs, start taking down these towers, and when those towers are down, he can commit against the docks. And that's exactly what he should do. The light cav is a nice and cost-efficient way to soak up arrow fire, and as I said, the presence of this castle and the Halberdier's Cavaliers should prevent that counterattack from doing any significant damage. Brew is pop-capped, Code is at 105 population. Seems like Code is not gonna end in a 4-0 here. Brew might be able to use his home map finally to gain an advantage. He has caught the start a lot better this time, but he still needs to finish the game, and bombard cannon shots like that won't help him. That was the biggest problem of Brew the entire set, finishing games. In each and every game he played, he had an advantage at some point, but he never was successful finishing the game. And that's just so important in Age of Empires in general. And once again, this is a bit of an overcommitment. Code is a very, very good player when it comes to defending, and you see that as things stand, Brew is losing quite a lot of stone on those towers. Code is gonna have a foothold on the right side, and now is trickling in some Cavalier into the opponent's eco. Brew's eco is better, Blue's army numbers are better. So this is still a long way to go for our Blue player here. But if there is any way of doing this, then it is by holding out here and defending, slowly grinding down the numbers of the red player. This Cavalier is actually doing quite a bit of a work here. because apparently Brew is too busy microing his ships to notice that his eco is getting slain. And the population for our blue player is steadily increasing. He's up to 30 caravels. Why do I have a deja vu feeling over here? I just feel like every single game we see in this set, it is all about, okay, Brew has the advantage, and then suddenly Code is just able to stall out the game until he's able to counterattack, and neither of the players right now have the goal in the middle, but this is great. This is great for the Code. He's annihilating that fleet. He just annihilated that fleet. You lost like 15 caravels in exchange for 2 bombard cannons. Demo is now coming in trying to get some hits on the left side, and one thing to note is that the overall condition of these ships is very underwhelming for Brew. Many of those are just super close to dying, and really, Brew never made a single bombard cannon to push the middle. That's the biggest problem. He's got the bigger foothold with all the towers, but he just keeps losing those towers, one after another. If you add it to the fact that there is some raids coming in here for the Code, suddenly you see why the populations are evening out. Suddenly you see why the score lead is actually in the favor of Code now, as we now have bombard cannons shelling those castles. Cannon galleons will be the response from Brew here, as it looks like Code tried to extend on the right side a little bit, selling quite a lot of wood for some extra gold. The market prices are still pretty decent, so that's extremely important here, because this way he's able to secure some more gold. As things stand, neither of the players have control over the middle gold mine. So if this ends up being a stalemate, then the player with the more gold in the bank, and the one that actually took more gold efficient engagements, will be the one that has the massive advantage at getting some more ships out and getting some more gold units out. And I think gold efficiency was on the side of our blue player. Now it looks like we're gonna have a big fight once again. The ships line up really badly over here for Brew, and I feel like this is a great fight once again for the Code. He takes over in ship count, 28 to 24. Cavalier now diving in to try and snipe the bombard cannons. Demos will be the response, but they just ignore the Cavalier for the time being. One bombard cannon dies, but now there is the foothold of Brew just shrinking and shrinking. Every single moment, that foothold is just getting smaller and smaller. Finally, bombard cannons are out for our red player as well, but it might be just a little too late, as especially those bombard cannons get some nice hits on top of the caravels over there. Once again, Brew switches back to Cavalier, but there is some demos here for the Code to prevent that one from happening, although now Code mismicros his bombard cannons a tiny bit, and he will end up losing those expensive bombard cannons. 20 to 26 is the ship count, but as I said, now it seems like Code is the one securing a bit of a map control in the middle, and if he starts mining the gold in the middle, we will see the exact same scenario happening as before. 0 relics for either player right now, as we're gonna have still a way better eco for Brew, but Code has a much bigger wood bank. That's something to point out as well, that Code's wood bank is a lot greater. And as things stand, it looks like Brew is the first one to send wheels to the middle to try and get some sort of gold income. But I'm not sure how many of these wheels will survive. Still, the Code is on a timer because his opponent will start mining gold. He's massing a big fleet right now, trying to take down as many towers as he can. And now bombard cannons are in as well for Brew. So let the dodgeball begin, which is extremely hard when you are Portuguese. Villagers being killed here is actually a nice thing to do, because it's not only a thing that you force them away, it's also about the fact that they have to rebuild those villas in order to be able to mine gold. As we will have a big scuffle. I think the advantage here is on the side of Brew, but it's hard to say because many of these ships are stacked up so badly. And am I seeing galleons being added? I see galleons indeed from our blue player, which is probably going to be inferior compared to the caravels in this situation. That's exactly what we're seeing. Bombard cannon still trying his best to just force away Brew from the gold. Remember that Brew has 2,000 gold in the bank, but he's out of mineable gold. His opponent still has thousands of gold here. In fact, this is the reason why Code actually sold his resources so early. Code actually worked with very good market prices, and you see that he still has a huge amount of mineable gold. This is on the scale of 2,000-3,000 overall. And now Code is picking up relics as well. And if you take a look at the middle, neither of the players are really able to mine gold convincingly, but the bombard cannons are now out for our blue player. He's gotta be careful because he's losing expensive siege weapons like that. But look at this. He's the one that is slowly crawling forward, tile by tile. He is just bringing in the towers and just makes sure that Brew is unable to take gold. And Code could pick that relic up as well for a third one. A bit of a counterattack here on the left side by Brew to result in probably a couple of villager casualties. But once again, we'll start transitioning to the stage where it's more about the middle control. And just the sheer amount of towers that were destroyed by Code are brutal. He killed way more towers than his opponent did. So Brew is still going to have trouble with the stone overall, because I think that he's running out of stone, whereas his opponent still has a larger bank and still has stone income. So this is the moment where, once those town numbers start dropping, Brew is going to have a hard time rebuilding them. It's not an immediate thing, it's something that's going to be for the next 20 minutes, but still, that's something to pay attention to. Now, a bunch of cannon galleons appear here for Brew in a very, very good defensive position to take down these towers, but as things stand, it's still Brew with the caravel numbers advantage, but I'm actually more convinced in the hold in the middle for TheCode. And Brew is sending literal suicide villagers mining gold, but this isn't gonna work well. I mean, these miners are barely getting anything in. They just die instantly. To the tower fire, to the cannon fire, and I feel like Brew might have thrown away too much eco here. He's gonna take down a couple of towers, but the amount of villagers that were killed are just brutal. And the only thing that goes for him right now is that he's got 75 army against 23. Keep in mind though that his gold bank is out, so he's only getting gold from here. In comparison, the Code can still add ships because he still has a huge amount of gold to work with. Now, one thing that the Code has to be careful about is that if he lets Brew secure a foothold in the middle, it doesn't matter that he still has mineable gold back at home. So the name of the game right now for the Code is to make sure that his opponent isn't able to get a convincing supply of gold in. And you can do that with bombard cannons, and now it seems like Brew is actually doing a better job pushing the middle. The bombard cannons are just disappearing for our blue player. And what is he up to? I don't see any additional unit being added, like light cav whatsoever from our blue player. And he needs to prevent those villas from mining gold. That's basically his win condition. Otherwise, he's just gonna fall behind in ship numbers. In fact, he's already outnumbered 2-1. He needs to prevent that mining operation. Otherwise, Brew is going to take at least one game here. And Brew's will count is still pretty decent, so despite the fact that these are basically kamikaze gold miners, they are still going to have some sort of gold income from them now. Now it looks like we will have some cannon galleons on the left side by Brew. Ours getting destroyed over here. As things stand, I think that Code will probably attempt to secure the left-hand side of the map. Now, however, his ship numbers will soon start becoming a problem because he's losing way too much foothold. And as I said, once you lose that foothold, you may never be able to regain it. So it starts to become a now or never situation here for the Code, especially because his opponent now has basically infinite gold access. And those wheels are not getting denied, so if Code isn't able to force a decisive engagement in the next 1 minute or so, he lost the game. He's just unable to push out, and he's slowly losing the remaining gold that he's having. And when that happens, he's going to be in the same situation as Brew were in the previous game, just unable to afford replenishing the army. He still has a small window until he has gold back at home, and his opponent is still having his villagers killed mining gold here, but as I said, we're talking in the scale of 1 or 2 minutes for Code before he has to call this one. He's still 2 relics, but yeah, it looks like he won't take a decisive engagement. Now, this engagement might indeed be decisive because I just don't see the ship numbers being here for Brew now. And if that happens, suddenly we're talking about... No, wait, it's 15 caravels versus 26. There is still more for Brew. I don't think there's a chance now for Code. He's trying to regain the middle once again, but this is just a desperation push now. This game might be over right now. Because Code is on 5 on gold, doesn't matter that he's got relics, he's never gonna be able to match the ship production of Brew. And Brew edges out a victory here, he's not gonna go down 4-0, so the hopes of a reverse sweep actually still live. What a long set. This is a super long set, by the way. This started like 2.5 hours ago, I believe. So, Code still trying to bring in some more reinforcements to the middle, but he's officially out of gold. So this is the moment where all his opponent needs to do is just finish off the remaining ships. No matter how inefficient the engagement, you just gotta finish off those ships, and from that point on just make sure that Code isn't able to secure foothold. Set up bombard cannons, set up trebs, light cavs, focus everything you got in the middle, because you know that Code is out. And Brew knows that very, very well. The score is now switching in the favor of our red player as well. And we're gonna have just 13 ships remaining for Code. He might try to go for a demo ship push. That might be his last chance to like try and get some of those ships down and even the odds on water. But as long as he doesn't have gold income from the middle, like actual mining, this game is never going to happen for him. You see that he is still steady 150 population, Brew is at 170. Code is actually doing a nice job holding in here though. Brew has to be careful not to overcommit, and that could be a move for Code that saves the game for him. Uh-oh. Brew's gotta be careful. Under no condition should he be losing this game right now. He's got all the gold in the middle, but he has been taking some very, very huge beatings in that naval fight. 6 ships remaining against 18 though. Only 6 in queue though for our red player, because Brew's got a wood bottleneck. So, and actually Brew is buying wood. That helps quite a bit for Code, because Code wants to sell his wood for gold. Still, at some point Code is gonna have to secure some gold in the middle. One way or another, there has to be some gold income for him. But I just don't see that being a thing, because as things stand, as you have organ guns, what's the concept of organ gun here? I mean, that even costs you gold. And I don't think that the organ guns do that well against ships. Yeah, they don't do well, and they're not super sturdy. So I'm really unsure what the organ gun is. Maybe just a misclick. Like he was trying to queue units, and he just misclicked, or used the wrong hotkey. Still, I have to say that Code is actually pushing back his opponent. As I said, under no condition should our red player lose this game here. He's got everything that he needs. I'm starting to see what Code is playing for, by the way. Notice the gold mines that are under control of Brew. This is the only gold mine on the right side that he has a very convincing control of. And I think what Code wants to play for is denying the rest of the gold mines. He knows that he is already out of gold, but what he wants to play for is to take cost-efficient engagements and also starve his opponent out of gold. Because there is still so many towers here for Code that he's going to be able to delay his opponent's access to gold quite considerably. It's a slim chance, it's a very, very slim chance in fact, especially with traps and cannon galleons being set up. But if there is a chance for Code, that's it. He needs to add more wheels on food though, and raid the wood eco of the opponent, because, as I said, the win/lose condition here for Code is that he needs to prevent his opponent from accessing wood, because that's the wood bottleneck for our red player. But indeed, as I said, if you lose the middle here and your opponent runs out of gold, it's game over. And with that, TheCode takes a loss here in game number 4. Brew not going down as easily as many would have thought. So we will take a look at now the home map of TheCode with a mirror matchup. I wonder, I really gotta wonder, would Rams have worked? Yes, especially against Scorpions. Rams would have been a perfect unit to soak up arrow fire. One thing that you have to consider though is that Cavaliers, Halberdiers, Light Cavs were on the field, and Bombard Cannons especially. So I think Bombard Cannons should have been able to destroy this. And it looks like the next game as I said, will be on the home map of TheCode. So let's see what he chooses to play on. It's Brew's tournament life on the line, and now we're going to the home map of TheCode. So it's going to be an awfully challenging thing to pull off here for him. All right. So let's see the map. And the map is still on Golden Swamp. From now on, it's actually mirror civilizations. Even the previous game was a mirror. But more importantly, it's going to be the home map selection and the mirror civ selection of Code. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something even like a Hans mirror or something like that happening. Because it's very possible that he would just go for like a standard setup whatsoever. Still no sign of the civilizations yet. There's a random dude in the lobby as well. There's a chance Code might just request a rematch on this map. I'm not sure if that is possible. He might actually select Golden Swamp again with slightly different civilizations. But anyways, this guy really feels like he wants to play in that lobby. I just don't understand why. That's so awkward when random people join tournament lobbies and they feel like they belong there. I don't blame them though, because they're playing on an old patch, so there is very few lobbies out there. So I guess, especially because the guy has it from the Xbox store, the game. So in that case, it doesn't automatically update in some instances. So he feels like this is actually the place where he wants to play. Alright, Code is on Portuguese. And the Brew... What is Brew up to? The map is Arabia. Are we just gonna see like a good old-fashioned Arabia Huns? Arabia Persians, alright. So Arabia Persians is the place where you could actually see war elephants being used. It's going to be a standard paladin, hand cannon type of a play, mixed in with some pikemen. Maybe even some cav archers. Those cav archers will be missing bracer, but they could be useful for sniping whales early on, so don't sleep on potential cav archers from Persians. And then elephants, scorpions, onagers, everything that you can imagine. So, as things stand, we don't have the game up just yet. But hopefully they will launch it in a moment. So, if Brew loses, and the score is 3-1 to Code, so it's match point, Brew is out of the tournament. If he wins, he will keep his hope alive at getting there in the losers bracket semifinals. In this one, the losers bracket semifinals will actually be played after these sets. So that's going to be the last set of the day. What's up now? Maybe one player is actually requesting a small break. This has been a very, very long and exhausting set for them. 4 games for roughly 3 hours of gameplay for them. It's actually pretty exhausting, most likely, for these guys. Oh, they launched it. Alright, so we're going to Arabia in a Persian mirror. So, Code versus Brew. This is Code's home map. And yeah, I actually remember that Taro versus Brew was a close set. I haven't seen that series. But one thing to consider is that attrition could start becoming a thing. I'm not sure how good Code and Brew are when it comes to playing very long sets. Because you could tell that the previous game was a little bit sloppier for Code than it was for Brew. So maybe in his peak play, Code is able to outplay Brew. But if attrition starts setting in for him, then things could start turning around. And these guys have been playing for 3 hours. So there is a chance that Brew is going to start steering his back. He's not going to give up on this easily, especially after having a pretty decent run in the tournament so far. So this technically is still something he can steer back. He needs to reverse sweep the set to do this, but it would be an insane set if Brew were to reverse sweep Code here. So TheCode and Brew with the Persians on Arabia. This is one of those setups where the early villager snipes could be extremely important. You probably open with a couple of paladins, but then it's going to be a heavy camo showdown. In the Golden Swamp game, the early villager snipes were way better for Brew, but after that, the villager snipes started to be a lot better for TheCode. So whoever grabs a village advantage from the villager snipes could potentially win this game here, because, as I said, Brew was Brew was doing a nice job with that in the first half of the previous game, but then Code actually was able to retaliate. Brew still won the game, but he can't afford such retaliations from happening. If he kills 3 vills, he needs to make sure he loses less than that. And we will jump into game number 5 over here. Welcome to Arabia. This is the home map of Code. He decides to go for Persian mirrors in Deathmatch World Cup 4. We will have Brew coming in with super early castles. This is interesting and ambitious build. I did mention that this is a villager snipe heavy approach. You see that Code is actually mixing in camels and paladins for villager snipes, but also adding halberdiers. For a red player, Brew, it's going to be all about halberdier defense and war elephants. So he wants to go for no villager snipes. Instead, he just wants to grab the powerful army at the beginning, just goes for a halberdier defense. No vills killed on either side just yet. The danger of this one for Brew is that he could be risking losing a lot of villagers early on. Because if Code comes in with a couple of paladins or camels, suddenly Brew could be losing vills, although he's walling his vills in quite a bit. And one thing I also noticed in the Huns... What matchup was that? Huns versus Sicilians matchup was that Code never was really aggressive when it comes to popping out the army and just flooding the opponent's base early on. He's waiting until he has a decent group of units to send forward. Now he's distracting those halberdiers with the cavalier, and now the other cavaliers, or well, in this case paladins, run in. That could be the first vill pick of the game, and this is why I said that I feel like this halberdier defense is very, very risky. Because if you start losing vills, you will have zero chance of retaliating your opponent. And that's exactly what we are seeing over here. Brew is down 4 vills. He's got castles up though, and now he's got war elephants. The problem is for him, I believe, that 4 vills down is a massive deficit, because you will just be slow adding your additional buildings. Whereas look at that, Code is already securing these key hills in the middle of the map. These are all extremely important hills to hold the middle, and with 4 vills deficit for Brew, I struggle to see how he's gonna have sufficient production to match the army numbers of TheCode. It's 45 pop against 63 already. Code has actually had this start much better than Brew, I would say, and if he finds another vill here, and he won't. So elephants are coming in, and you will have scorpions. Elephant, scorpion, bombard cannon is the standard way of playing Persian mirrors in the long run. The problem, as I said, for Brew is that he wanted to go for the earlier elephants because he went for the early castles. However, this way he, number 1, surrendered map control, number 2, lost vills, which allows his opponent to get those castles up at a comparable time. In fact, if you take a look at this, we're already talking about 3 castles finished for Code and 3 of them being almost finished as compared to just 3 standing for Brew. So he's gonna have some war elephants, but at this stage, even the paladin raids here could potentially cripple the eco of our red player. He needs to vote these vills in because he needs these TCs up, and at this point Brew can't afford to lose vills to Code anymore. That's just unacceptable for him. He's just going to be a little too late. Actually, no. He might be able to stop this castle, but the castle ends up going up. So if Brew wants to win this one, he must not lose more vills here. And now the hill advantage is on the side of TheCode, which is the bigger problem, I would say, for Brew. and Scorpions, Halberdiers with the hill. This could be a short game. This could be a very short game because the start was light years better for Code. And the Trebs are also firing downhills, taking down some of the Scorpions. Onagers are already in. And I did mention that War Elephant production depends on the amount of castles, and they're talking about 6 castles as opposed to just 3. TC is already being molten here. I feel like this is probably the most one-sided game of all in this one, because Brew's army is just disappearing. His will count is still alright, but he has 0 map control, he's got 0 army, and he will start losing that primary gold in a matter of moments, I would say. It's going to be awfully hard to hold this one. I just dislike the game plan of going for the immediate War Elephants, because that's so risky. If you just lose 2 wills, you already fall behind, and that's exactly what happened. Brew lost 4 wills, and despite the fact that he started making castles earlier, he still has just 4 castles as opposed to his opponent having 6, because his opponent has much more building capacity. As Scorpions do bonus damage against elephants, by the way, that's why they are using it over here. And while this is not necessarily cost efficient for the Code, I feel like he can actually afford to be a little bit more aggressive here. Brew actually is out of food, he still has a decent amount of gold in the bank, as opposed to him. His opponent is out of gold, but still has a decent bank of food. 1 castle is gonna go down. Brew might have a chance of holding this one, but Code is already having a much better eco expansion. He's controlling all neutral gold mines and already picking up relics. This is why Code is such a dangerous player. He's just able to use his temper advantage so well to secure a late game advantage. Like, already picking up relics, as I said, traps being set up to start taking down these siege workshops. The workshops will have some onagers popping out. And look at this, this is also a nice little touch to Code's gameplay. He is adding monks to heal the War Elephants. And preserving those War Elephants is also pretty important overall, as now the siege rams might actually be able to jump on the Scorpions of our blue player. Castles are still under fire. I think at least 1 castle will go down here, as now the elephants break out on the right side. They line up very, very nicely though for the Scorpions. Still, I feel like Code might be miscoordinating his army here a little bit, although when he groups up those Scorpions and takes a shot, those elephants will get absolutely wrecked. Still, it looks like Brew is holding this one, and 1 castle still stays up. I'm not sure what happened here to Code. It looks like he's targeting the TC. That probably is because he wants to make sure that his opponent isn't able to add a lot of vills on that gold mine. So he kind of wants to limit his opponent's expansion towards mining gold. That's my best guess for that. Castle will be attempted here on the left side by Brew, but that's not going to work out at all for him. And as things stand, with the heal advantage, Code can just sit on this lead. Why do I have a feeling that this could once again be a super, super long game? Because Brew is not dead, but he doesn't have the map control to do anything with this game. He's gonna be probably down by 3 or 4 relics. He doesn't have control over either of the neutral gold mines, and he would have to break through a line of castles that are all on a hill. I just feel like once again it's a position where Brew is just way too much cornered within his own base, and he will just struggle to break out. And as things stand, the monks are coming in for a couple of conversions. Those can be pretty helpful. Even 1 or 2 conversions can actually swing a battle in your favor. This castle apparently will never go up. I like this sort of palisade slash stone wall on the right side, although Brew has an opening here, so it doesn't really matter. But this is the big deal. Code having this gold mine, Code having this gold mine, and this number. 3 relics overall. So now we are gonna have some siege rams being added by the Code. He's also mixing some bombard cannons. Once again, the problem for this game is going to be that Brew is not completely dead, so he's not gonna give up. But Code has all the lead that he can have, so he doesn't want to overcommit to anything, and he will just sit back and wait. So we will have a potentially very long stalemate here once again, as the trap will be sniped here by Brew. Nice defense. And one thing that's nice with those bombard cannons is that the elephants cannot really chase them down, so you need some light cavalry slash paladins to do that. Army numbers still double for Code. Brew struggling with population really badly. Currently, he still has gold to work with, but I have to say that this primary gold is very much exposed, and here comes the blob. If Brew was Tatars right now, the appropriate play would be flaming camos, but unfortunately, that's not really going to be the case. I would love to see one deathmatch with Persians versus Tatars, because that's a place for flaming camos. Speaking of this fight though, this is what I was referring to. 4 monks converting from the back. If you convert 4 elephants, that's even better than killing 4. Though Brew, once again with the help of the arrow fire, with the scorpions being safe, he's actually able to take down the remaining elephants here, though he lost quite a lot of his scorpions to the cannon fire from our blue player, but Brew, it seems like he's actually able to break out, and I think like he still has a window to win this game. He's gonna be awfully aggressive, otherwise he will just fall behind in terms of resources, but he may have a window, and one thing that elephants are capable of doing really nicely is being able to take down buildings really fast. You don't even necessarily need a huge amount of siege to push out of this one, but it looks like the next wave of code once again will pin Brew inside his base, and as long as he's just stuck in there, he's gonna have a hard time getting anywhere in this game. Some paladins from Brew, or from Code, hitting the back of Brew's base, and that's actually quite a lot of villagers killed, and 0 reaction from Brew. Brew in this game lost 24 vills, killed absolutely 0. Not a single moment in this game was Brew threatening to the economy of Code, and now I feel like this push might be a little too tough to handle for our red player, because as things stand, that Trap is going to finish off that castle. Scorpion still lining up nicely for the shots on the elephants. Bombard cannons will finish off some of the scorpions, but not all of them. Elephant numbers, we are talking about 24 versus 19, and the monks are so important here. Look at the monks for Code. Those are the ones that are really winning him the battle, though he still needs to be careful, because the castle could technically take down quite a lot of those monks, but not before the conversions occur, and it's still 22 war elephants versus 13. It seems like this is the end for Brew, who played some super competitive sets, pulled some massive upsets, and I'm actually shocked by the fact that he was able to 4-0 Code in their first matchup. Because he's playing well, but you could tell that Code is a much more convincing and in general higher level player than Brew in DM in this set. So I'm really curious what happened in that set. Maybe Code had a very, very bad day, or just some things went wrong for him in those games. Because as things stand, Code is almost pop-capped. Brew is at 109 population with 7 army, so I think I can do a countdown of 3, 2, 1. Almost perfect! Almost perfect timing on that, but exactly, when you look at your population and you see I have 10 army, then you know you're dead. Especially when paladins are running around in your eco. And the Code wins a very convincing best of 7 over here. 4-1 is the final score. It was a very, very long and grindy 3.5 hours long set or so. The Code keeping his hope alive at getting back to the grand finals. Last year he was in the grand finals, lost 40-0 to Viper. I have to say though that he needs to be a little bit more convincing closing out games if he wants to actually get to the grand finals, because otherwise he's gonna have a hard time.